Good evening, everyone.
Everybody, is everyone?
Good evening.
Evening.
Okay. All residents have been admitted into the virtual meeting. Legal counsel, and with that, it is 7:31. We will call this meeting to order. And first item on our agenda today is Mr. Keith Allen with the weather.
Good evening to our esteemed council and to the couple of residents zooming in. Of course, is always wrong. And I've got nothing but good weather to talk about, but it's going to get a lot cooler. The warmest day for the rest of the month is probably going to be Sunday. 75 on Sunday, and there's a chance of some rain, not much, which we sorely need, but it doesn't look like there's anything substantial in our foreseeable future. Maybe some showers late in the day or at night and early in the morning on Monday. Other than that, it's just going to be 60s across the board, 40s at night, 30s in the hinterlands, and that's it.
When do we get our first frost?
Around here, Halloween. By that time, I think it may be warming up again enough so that maybe we won't get that frost until we get into the first week or so of November.
Good.
Any questions? The weatherman?
Any
How about Marty?
I keep eating my tomatoes until
Yeah,
it's
my
frost.
tomatoes are coming in great.
I see that Lynn, there's some questions right now. Okay, hold on just a second. I'm not done yet. Barbara, I'm in a meeting right now. So if you got your boy,
He's back at your house,
okay, good. All right.
and I left you some food.
Okay, thank you.
This is public
Thank you,
record.
Barbara.
Just so you know, this is public
Uh,
record.
just really quick, Lynn, I see Lynn, he hadn't fallen asleep already. We're pretty early in the meeting for that to happen. I wanted to find out if Lynn, if anything had changed with this is more for the residents' comments, but we're gonna sort of merge it together and sync it together here. Because this is important to Lynn and the people in his neighborhood with the recycling bins. Have the men been putting them up on the sidewalks rather than in the driveway and in the streets, Lynn?
Lynn, we will now turn to residents' comments, and Lynn, you're up to answer that if you've heard that. Okay, apparently not. Anyone else have any comments, questions, advice, wisdom?
Comment section.
George, I see a hand up.
Thanks, Arthur. I just wanted to chime in. I was looking ahead at the packet and the meeting invite and seeing the recommendations from the election committee. I just wanted to register my resident comment on that because thanks to kid duty, I might not be able to stick around for the whole meeting. But
Okay, go do it.
yeah, just flagging for everybody. I think the idea of the event, the recruitment event, serves a lot of good purpose in terms of encouraging participation, but I would just flag my concern around that being hosted, staffed, and operated by the election committee itself. I know the current chair of the election committee and I have a little different approach on that, but during my time as the committee chair, we really worked to make sure that we avoided even any potential perception of bias, and I think that could be something that triggers for in-person meetings that not all candidates, not all potential candidates are there and interact. And we always tried to make sure that messages, emails, communication, engagement with the candidates and the committee was done with all of them equally, same time. I think that event could be something hosted by the council, community engagement committee, but I don't think, in my mind, it wouldn't be appropriate for the election committee to be hosting that type of event.
Oh, okay, thank you. Good advice. I see Marty. Michael, somebody else is trying to come in.
That's Marty.
Oh, it's her hand. Okay, Marty, unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I want to thank George because I couldn't agree more. And the same is true of the brochures too, that, talk about what the village is doing. None of that should look remotely like any kind of candidate literature. This year's committee is very aware of that. And George, like I said, you're right on target here. It was hosted, a similar event, and just sort of a meet and greet, well before, in 2017, well before the election cycle began. And you'll see in our notes on it here that we would recommend that again, that it be completely, this is about community information, because one of the best ways to get people involved is to give them more info, ask them what they want to know and what they think. So I think that that's a very valid point. Couldn't agree more. And that's one reason we brought it to the council instead of just having the committee do it, is because we think it needs to be absolutely not candidate involved in any way. It just and needs to happen not like in March, April, or May when the election cycle is in full swing, but this fall or winter, long before the election cycle starts. So couldn't
Good,
agree more.
okay.
And we'll talk more about that later in the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Marty. Anyone else? I see no hands up, nobody waving. So with that, we will go to the next item on the agenda, which is the fire board is looking for volunteers. The fire board is we may have one here, a live one in the house, but the fire board is the community organization that supports the fire office up here on, I don't know if I'm putting it in the right direction, on Connecticut Avenue. That used to be a volunteer group, and then the county took it over some decades ago, but this support organization still exists. We have one member on there right now, Paul Weller, and there's room for 2 more.
Correct.
So if anyone likes to hang around firehouses, fire trucks, and firemen, now's your time to volunteer for that.
What's the commitment, the time commitment?
I don't know what is, how many
It's
meetings
not
they
too
have?
much. I think maybe a meeting once a quarter at the
Yeah.
fire department. And Paul Weller will know more. I know he's come and talked to us about it before.
Yeah.
And he stayed on it.
Have council members been,
Mm,
have they volunteered,
there was a person who was a council member,
but not
but
current?
who was, it wasn't concurrent. He had been on the board and then stepped off.
We had 2 members from Martin's Additions last year. They email me every year and ask, that we have 3 volunteers. And last year we put out a call and we got 1 additional member besides for Paul to join them last year. And he has stepped down.
Yeah.
So that was Drew Maker, who also just bought Brookville Pharmacy. So Brookville Market.
So get the word out.
He's busy.
Yeah, Ron, if we don't get volunteers, obviously not an issue, but if we don't and a council member would like to volunteer, is that permissible?
Yes, yeah, that would be fine.
Just maybe Jeff wants to volunteer.
I
Jeff is here.
Be voluntold.
Oh, he's still here. Jeff, your hands up. You have just been volunteered for the fire committee.
As I was going to mention, and Andrew, you probably remember that I did offer, but then I rescinded when we did have that extra person jump in. So consider me in the queue if we need folks. I'd be delighted.
Okay.
Yeah, all right.
Okay, so the word is out there. Next item, Michael, your report.
Okay. I'm earlier in the agenda today, so,
Ooh.
and it's 7:40.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Keep it moving.
Sad news to start off. Unfortunately, Scott Wilson, the Brookville Pharmacy manager, had a surfing accident in Ocean City recently. There is a GoFundMe to try to help him out. It's pretty serious, I understand, and he was partially paralyzed. It sounds like he's on the recovery road, but it's going to be a long recovery. So I just want to make everyone aware of that.
Yeah, and if I can add, I spoke to the pharmacist, and first of all, I forget who started the awareness campaign on the email.
Right.
Fantastic.
Martin on Chestnut.
Is that right?
I
Yeah.
think so.
It started with a pretty modest $5,000, the goal, and I think it's like in the 40s now.
Wow.
People really stepped up. And so I think that's just a wonderful tribute to Scott, of course, and wonderful that this community has really stepped up and $20, $30, $50, it all adds up.
Mhm.
And so that will hopefully help him get back on his feet.
Yeah, he got airlifted off the beach, and my understanding is that the insurance didn't cover that,
Yeah.
that airlift.
Yeah,
so
he was apparently
he's,
body surfing
okay.
and I think broke like C2, C1, one of those,
Oh, no.
but the surgery helped him. He's
Wow.
been working on getting back on his feet.
Okay. So, yeah, and I saw that go out on Section 3 as well as our listserv. So I know it's still spreading the word. So feel free to spread the word
Yeah.
far and wide. On a more positive note, we have delivered leaf bags to over 100 households so far. We had to order more because we ran through the amount of leaf bags that we had used all of last year already. So we're well ahead of schedule there. And then leaf or street cleaning and leaf vacuuming has started this week. You've probably seen them on your street. If not, they will be there soon.
I'd like to mention something that we are advising households to mulch their leaves, leave them in the garden. And streets are different. And that's because they clog the storm drains and are slippery when wet. So they're safety hazards. So that's the reason we clean the streets up.
Yeah.
But leave them in your garden, clean the streets.
Leave the leaves. It's in the name. And they're also using batteries this year instead of gas powered blowers. So it's going to be quieter for you. And also that's a county law now. So remind your own landscapers, do not use gas blowers in Martin's Additions. It is against the law. And we will be reporting you and your company. So that's a new policy as of this year or this fall. The Brookville sidewalk, as you all know, the council met and approved the paving contractor for that. So we're moving forward with them. And then we also got the final last easement needed for this project signed and completed. So that's another step forward. One step at a time. Next steps for the Brookville sidewalk will include getting final approval from the county for their sediment control during construction, as well as the state's final sign off and notice to proceed. Then we will finalize the schedule and the paving contractor can break ground. Maybe we can have a ribbon cutting or first shovel or something ceremony, but that schedule will be coming out soon once we have those last couple pieces in place. 2 remaining committee volunteers for this year still need to sign their forms. Once that is completed, we will be able to schedule our annual training onboarding session, especially for new volunteers, but for all volunteers. And we're hoping to do that by now, but we're still waiting for the last couple pieces of people here. But I'm looking at the November 3rd, 5th, or 6th. And that's the first week of November. So council members, maybe you all can, after the meeting, can tell me what of those dates work for you all. November 3rd, 5th, or 6th. Not the 4th, because we have a variance hearing, which I'll talk about in a minute. The Halloween party and parade is scheduled for Sunday, October 26th from 3 to 5:30. There will be flyers and more notices going out, but it was already in the newsletter and we're all set with all of the vendors already. And Keith is getting the fire truck, hopefully. So that'll be good. We'll have pumpkins again this year and we'll lead a little parade down the block. Standard, same as last year. We will be planting 18 native trees on private property. In the next couple of weeks, we have placed the order for those, along with an additional 3 trees to replace trees that fell down this last year or were taken down because they were dying in the public right of way. The audit is well underway. We're on pace to be done by the end of the month. We've gotten another whole trench of questions and emails this week, including I know Jeff got some as the treasurer, the assistant manager got some, and we have, I think everything's fine. It's going to be good. It's going to be great. But we did have a couple things where the ARPA money came in and we included a lot of different line items to spend the ARPA money, including on salaries. But federal law requires those salaries only to be paid for by hourly employees. It can't go to salary employees. I am a salaried employee, so my salary doesn't count. So we had to reallocate that money that was originally being spent on my salary to now ARPA's paying for other things instead. So that's why we over budgeted or over allocated those ARPA funds. That's the American Rescue Plan Act funds. So we are just doing a little switcheroo for that. But otherwise, I think we're fine and have everything we need. The survey, I know we're going to talk about the survey later today, but I just wanted to mention here again that the survey is well underway and is in your packet today. And we will be sending the survey to every individual over the age of 18 in the village. So if you disagree with your partner, you can both fill it out separately. You don't need to come to an agreement and fill out one survey. I know in previous years, there was maybe some people thought that it was per household, but no, it's per person. So if you're a voter in Martin's Additions, you can fill out the survey, that's fine. And then we do have a variance application and a hearing scheduled for November 4th at 7:30. That's why we can't have the volunteer training on that day. So we can't be double booked. And then lastly, I'll be doing my Leadership Montgomery monthly training session on October 22nd. And then I will be heading out for my International City County Management Association conference, which is the 26th through.
Where is that?
This year it's in Tampa, Florida, as long as the airlines are still flying.
Right, okay.
So that's all good. And that was easy this year because our credit card has a bunch of points. So I was able to book my flight with points as well as the hotel. So that concludes my report. And I also include Doug's buildings report. There are a couple new things happening there. So you can read that at your pleasure. And if you have any questions about any of those, please let me know.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Things are going smoothly. The next item is our annual survey. For the last year, I think was the first time we had a professional group at University of Maryland design it and operate it. And they did a very good job on it. Everyone was very pleased. And we've continued with them. We've had, the questions are in the packet tonight. We've had, Alexa has suggested 1 or 2 questions, and Jeff has also suggested a few questions.
And I have a question.
Oh, you have, okay. So let me open. Alexa, why don't you talk a little bit about what your suggestion was?
It's a 2-part suggestion. I think it's easiest just to read it.
Yeah, go ahead.
And the first question would be, have you been affected by actions taken by the current federal administration? Yes, no. And the second question is, do you believe that the VMA should take an active stance against any of the current administration's activities? If so, how?
Okay. Susan, you had
Oh, my question?
yeah.
Okay. Should VMA fund events limited to a small number of participants? For example, take cake decorating or bonsai, or brewing beer in your basement?
Or what was the
just the-
last one?
Brewing beer in your basement,
Oh.
that was for Ron.
Oh. He
Yeah,
votes yes.
But,
Lynn Welly votes yes on that one.
but the premise is, should we, or the underlying question is, should we try to spend our event money on events, the biggest bang for the buck, the most people, or do discrete,
Smaller
very
group.
limited
Right.
events? It's interesting.
Or I guess respond to maybe residents who are putting together events for the community, or like the block parties, and request funding from the council. I mean, I guess it's the same thing, just different direction. We don't push the agenda, they push the agenda, or the possible event. I mean, that could be a question as well. Or
I'm not sure if that is the same, because of the village restrictions on block parties,
well, I'm not suggesting block
But
parties. I'm saying,
funding-
like, is it
funding block parties.
does your question indicate it has to originate? Is it the council that should have the ability to help organize and fund a beer brewing event in someone's basement versus I'm villager A, I'd like to do this event, can I get funding from the council? Is that not the same thing? More or less, you're
Yeah.
requesting funds for an event that's a
Well,
little more
I'm-
bespoke.
Yeah,
I think Susan's asking about, can the village fund?
yeah, I'm
create
asking about
events
through
that are-
this
That for limited
CEC
numbers.
recommendations or
Yeah.
through council. of
And
its
this
own
has come up
initiative.
because like for the, like the wine tasting idea, it's like there's a limited number of seats, you know, so there's 20 people that can be there.
Got it.
So should village funds be going to have 20 people drinking?
Right, right.
Or do we want the greatest good for the greatest number
Oh,
in
I
that
think-
utilitarian?
I think
way
you're
of
leading
thinking.
the witness. I understand.
I think it took a while for the witness to
The witness
understand he
is a
was
little
being
slow.
led.
It's been a long
but
day,
yeah.
so the witness is a little slow today.
Two
I
kids
understand.
and 3 kids, I get it,
Yeah,
but yeah.
okay.
Okay.
I.
But you
my wife
got
would
it,
say,
and
I
that's
smell what you're
important.
stepping in right now.
Before we start considering, Jeff, you had some suggested questions on Brookville Road. Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly. Can you
Good.
hear me?
Okay, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, and I'm literally about to walk and I'll be there in person shortly. But yeah, I threw out a couple general questions. One was just in general satisfaction of residents on information on Brookville Road, and then, you know, the ability to add any other further comments.
Right.
I also, given we've talked about, while there's been some resolution in some areas, we know it's a bit of an ongoing saga for other sections, was the county council's proposed ZTA on the zoning, and just to, again, to hear satisfaction on information and ability to input concerns. And then the third was about have residents, or have you considered volunteering or running for office, and then an ability to respond open-ended, simply to get some further information. And let me just preface this. I threw these out there with the idea that having information could be valuable, but I also appreciate Michael's you know, wherewithal and thoughtfulness around, we need to keep our survey focused, right? We don't want to get too devolved. So these are not lines in the sand. I did want to put them out there because I think they're important topics, but I also appreciate that if residents want to respond on any of these or other topics we haven't thought about, we do provide open-ended questions to add any inputs they'd like. So I toss these out there, but again, they're not lines in the sand or major issues, but I just thought that they could be valuable if we put them in. But I defer to my colleagues on the council of whether or not they agree with me. Over.
Okay, thank you. We'll be waiting for you to show up in person. Let me remind the council that the original purpose of having the survey, which goes back about 7, 8 years now, was to inform the council of residents' desires, values, directions, ideas, and in some way also to inform the residents of what everybody else is thinking. Some people might think this is a great idea that everyone should be on board on. When you do the survey, it turns out there's only a small handful, or the reverse. We found this with composting. The first time we raised this, I think a majority of people says, why would you even think of that? By the third or fourth time it came up, a majority, more than a majority, a super majority were saying, yeah, that's a great idea, let's do it, as they started thinking about it. So with that in mind, let's discuss the proposed questions we have. First, Alexa, my initial thought of yours is that it really doesn't address village issues. What do we do with the information? How do we use it? What do we learn about the village that would come out of the question? So my impression would be not to include it, but I would like to hear others. Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's a little too political a question. I think it could be rephrased. I do think what goes on in this country and with the federal government, state government, we see has an impact to our friends and neighbors. I think if we were to agree to go in that direction, I would say the second question would have to be pretty neutral and say, do you believe the VMA should take an active stance in favor or opposed to any administration's activities? Not this one, but in general.
But if I would
So-
actually have a second question, if we were to include it,
Yeah.
what could the village do?
Right.
What
Right.
role, what
I mean,
role
We've
is,
we've issued letters and, you know, or signed on to letters in the community. But again, I would have to say, since we're not a political council and we don't want to take sides politically in this village, regardless of how blue it is or purple or whatever sections are, I think we have to be
It's-
careful there.
2/3 blue,
Yeah. I still think we have to.
according to the county.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
one third, actually, it's 2/3 Democrat, less than 1/3 Republican, because there's a certain number of independents.
Mhm.
Uh,
Still too
Anyway.
soon.
And,
So those are my thoughts.
and I would concur, while we all have very strong feelings, perhaps, one way or the other, probably most of us, 2/3 of us,
I'm not surprised.
reacting that
mean-
it's not a great climate. I do think we have always strived to be nonpartisan. And I think that is what we should continue to do. Asking,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, asking if you've been affected is not, I mean, it's an innocuous question and it
Mhm.
could give us some insight into ways, just making people aware,
Mhm.
if nothing else, even if the council doesn't take action, it could just raise awareness of
But
It
how
could
many
also
people
be-
have been impacted.
It could also be striking the second question, saying, if so, how can the VMA village council be helpful? Or, you know, like, just keeping it simple, like, what services could we provide that could be helpful to you
For
if
example,
you've been
the
impacted?
county has been running job fairs.
Yeah.
Right?
We
Yes,
don't
it
have
has
the,
websites.
we don't have the
Yes.
capability to do that.
We could create awareness of those,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah,
put
we
those
can do
out in wrap-ups or whatever to help our friends and neighbors. So anyway, we could tinker with that. Jeff, any thoughts?
Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks. And I think we're
Is that as well?
in the
Oh,
same lines. I think, I appreciate the thoughtfulness of the question and not to reiterate or repeat what others have said, but I know we've done some things around, for example, has it affected residents specifically around employment? And Michael has put together, if you remember all, we had many of the state and county representatives at our 40th annual or anniversary. And through that, we had individualized outreach. They provided resources and we created a website. So just in that vein, I would make it, if we're going to do anything, we should be very focused in collecting information that is seen as apolitical and in a way that helps our residents. I think the employment question is a good one, but I defer to the best phraseology. I think the way that they're there now could infer something that questions just things that are outside of our scope in terms of surveying our residents. Over.
Okay, good, thank you. Is there a conclusion here?
I mean, I think to me, it would be helpful to know if large swaths of our community have been impacted. Maybe it would be interesting just for our awareness. And I would say, so the question one, have you been affected by actions taken by the federal government, current federal government? Or by current federal policy? You don't even have to talk about the administration, by current federal policy. And then it could be a follow-up. If so, how can the VMA, how can the VMA be helpful to you as you navigate, your situation?
Right.
Something like that. We can tinker with the words, but I think that's kind of what we're trying to get at. How can we help our fellow residents in these times?
The purpose that I had behind it, the purpose of it was exactly that. Because of the immensity of the actions being taken.
Yeah.
And I totally understand not quite there yet, but that this is a nonpartisan platform. Still a platform, still a platform that I feel should do something in terms of trying to understand how such actions are affecting us. Just as I said, I'm perfectly I'm perfectly interested in massaging it so it's not so politically
Okay, I'm
intense.
wondering, I think you had a word. Have you heard enough to kind of talk to the survey people?
Yeah, I guess the one question I have on the wording is, do we want to make it specific to employment?
No,
Like, has your
No.
employment been affected
No,
by?
because it
No.
could be immigration status, it could
I
be
see.
anything.
it could be anything. It could be
insurance,
anything. We don't
yeah, could be,
know.
Yeah, healthcare, yeah.
I'm happy to take that language and
Okay.
Should have locked it.
Yeah, there we
I'm happy
go.
to take that language and
Sneak
massage it.
Welcome.
Sorry, may I make a quick comment?
Go ahead. No,
Not to be dramatic or anything in my interest. For me personally, and again, it's up to everyone here and to go forward or not, but I don't feel comfortable with the way it's worded. We've never had a question like this. And if you're going to do a question like this, first of all, it should be for any administration. It shouldn't be a
Yeah.
one-off.
Yeah.
And again, I don't think I do think it's important that we support our residents.
Mhm.
And we have to be focused on that. And while there may be a lot of, I don't want to overthink this, but let's just say that any concerns that folks have and want to talk about at a national level are really personalized, and that should be handled as private citizens. If there's anything specific that we can do or need to do, we have to then be focused on it.
Mhm.
But again, there's just something about this line of questioning that doesn't pass a sniff test with me. And Ron, correct me if I'm wrong, but legally speaking, I just feel we're going in a slippery slope that goes from a municipality to something that almost feels like a political action committee. And I feel that unless it's something very focused and worded in a way, I see, and Andrew is making some comments, and I don't want to get.
You may have missed it, but this is what we kind of decided.
Yeah.
Would be a better solution.
I hear you, but the only thing is, and again, I just want to rephrase, and then I'll put pause or mute on myself, because I'm not here to convince others to say that they should include it. So if there's a majority, that's great. But I feel still, even a general question that says, just how do we address your challenges? What is a challenge? Is it a personal view versus the idea of something around job loss or things? So and we know that we are able to do that because there are resources in the state and county, but I don't know quite what else you might want to be tapping into. And are you opening up a Pandora's box that crosses a line for us into a political realm that, quite frankly, I don't feel that we should be jumping into?
I agree with Jeff. In fact, during the big recession, 2007, 8, 9, when there was a lot of unemployment, this never came up as an issue. And I think that if it's the unemployment aspect of it, it's something that happens, that occurs, it's not our local concern.
Can I just comment real quick on municipal surveys? And I've done some training on this. You want to be very focused and you want to be forward looking, and you want to tell people what you're going to do with the data. If 100% of people tell you that they have been impacted by the federal government's policies recently, so what? What do you do with that? There's nowhere for that to go. I think what the council's feeling is people are hurting in different ways, and you want to know about that, and you want to be able to reach out to them. You want to be able to help them if you can. So maybe there's another maybe the survey is not the best venue for this. Maybe there's an opportunity to put out a call like, hey, if you have lost your job, can you reach out and just like, we'd love to talk to you and like see how we can help. Maybe that's a more of a direct,
Yeah.
ask versus putting that in the survey.
Yeah. Or if you're living in a mixed status family,
Mhm.
there are resources in the county and the state that can be helpful to you. I mean, hey, look,
Okay,
whatever it is, I think it's again, as Jeff said, a very thoughtful line of questioning and let's maybe. we
And
can-
I know we're gonna go to, and I just want, Ron, in the background, I don't know if you have it at your fingertips. I know you have this encyclopedic mind of quoting things, but if there's any lines here specific to political action versus municipality, and by asking a question like this, is there a line that's crossed, and do we have to be very careful about this sort of questioning?
Yeah, so I agree with what everybody has said. It's not actually in my mind a clear issue as to what line you can't cross over. There are things you can do as a constituent service, even though they might be political, like even endorsing candidates. That's deemed a constituent service for your residents. But on the other hand, historically, the village has shied away from that sort of thing. I was thinking similar to what Michael was saying. Perhaps you just ask the question in a different way. Instead of saying, "Have you been impacted by the administration?" Say, "Are you currently suffering from unemployment or loss of insurance or etc." It doesn't have to be tied to the administration. And the Maryland Code does allow municipalities the express power to engage in social services. So you could have a grant-based system for people that are hurting.
okay, my judgment is on this is not to include it in the survey for all the various discussions that we've had. Is there any strong objection to that, or anyone want to argue against that?
Yeah, especially if we go down the line of the grants, we're gonna go to Susan's question of village resources, and how those are used. I think we don't ignore this question. We'll figure out a different mechanism of asking it and maybe rewording and figuring out how we can be helpful.
Even the newsletter.
In a newsletter, yeah, or weekly.
I do want to state, and exactly what others have shared, is I personally know, without divulging, I personally know residents and dear friends who are, in the community who have had job loss. That's been very painful. It's not just job loss, it's loss of career, it's loss of things. And so I'm very sensitive to the idea of tapping into how could we help folks.
Yeah.
But I want to just be able to do it in a thoughtful way, because again, these are very personalized discussions. And frankly, if you see a question about that, you're probably reluctant to answer it anyway, just because it is so personalized. So if there are ways for us to figure out, and Michael, he's like a beat cop, right? He's always like on the street, he is the pulse, and maybe there's a way that we can tap into that in a way that is a bit more discreet and thoughtful so that we can get that pulse. If that makes
And
sense.
as Jeff and I know, since I know folks here too, is in the most extreme cases, the help that these folks would ask for is to help them sell their homes, because that's what they have to do. And it's happened. So that's the reality of it.
Okay,
So I hope you take that in the best possible way.
Oh, I absolutely do. I'm glad that I brought it up.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay,
it's one
thank
of
you.
the reasons that I even decided
Right.
to be part of this, is because
right.
one needs to act in these times. So
Okay.
I was simply curious as to what the reality was in the village.
Okay. Jeff's
Thank
question
you.
on Brookville. Do we want to ask specific questions about Brookville Road at this point?
I mean, there was what was the second, there was a two.
And there was another one on the zoning amendment.
The zoning, but did Brookville did you feel that you received enough information on the status of Brookville? Was that the question?
I'll tell you what drove me to just put it out there was if we recall the meeting where we had some residents turn up and were very impassioned about the idea of just learning more and hearing more. And I think when we had taken the action to, have that other vote and give pause for about a week or so, it ended up as Arthur, I believe, it really, I think we came together and it really became a positive. And so I only share that in that's what kind of motivated me to put that in, because it's sort of a proxy of who didn't show up at the meeting. And are there others that may want to express just dissatisfaction or produce ideas? But I'm not, like I said, there are open-ended questions at the end. So if anyone feels strongly, they can dump it in.
I think so. I think the issue with Brookville Road is like a classic. It is the perennial, this has been going on for years. You haven't shown up to a single meeting and suddenly a vote is coming up and, 5-alarm fire, because I didn't know about this and let's slow it down. And so maybe there's a way, and again, I think the open-ended questions might address this, but maybe there's a way for us to improve on, even if it's been going on for 3 years, communicating the status updates with the community. But this has been, this project didn't show up last month with decisions that had to be made with a contractor. So
the other thing I just want to mention, the survey is that we call it our annual survey. So the timeline that it's technically supposed to be from is July 1 of 2024 to June 30th of 2025. That's the survey period. So the list of events and stuff, I'm thinking about, well, which 4th of July party happened in this fiscal year and all that. So the Brookville sidewalk is something that happened, over the course of the last 5 years, but it's a little odd to ask about something.
Time out, not to be, but it has not happened yet. The Brookville sidewalk is actually about to take place.
It's ongoing.
So the idea of saying that it's in the past, we haven't even started the construction. So I would say that this is a very low-hanging fruit, low-cost way to tap into the community to provide input on a project, which is at the moment our second, but could end up being our number one in terms of the highest capital outlay we've ever had in our history. So I would just argue that this is by far no means in our rearview mirror. And this is only going to become more and more of an issue, because as soon as you have those, we're going down to single lane for 2 months. Trust me, this is not going to be seen as this happened yesterday. So if you want to tap into to try and get feedback, I'm giving you the opportunity, but if you choose and say you don't want it,
well,
God bless.
The decision happened, in the last couple of weeks, but and you're right, the work, of course, is about to happen. But the timeline overall is like this is a 5-year project at this point. So asking the question for one specific year when we haven't been asking it, maybe there's a way to ask it.
Generic. Maybe it needs to be generic for major VMA projects, infrastructure projects or otherwise, that are multi-year projects. Do you feel like you're informed enough about these multi-year projects, including the Brookville sidewalk? For example, do you feel like the village is communicating and providing updates, for major projects like that? I just feel like if we're just talking Brookville, there'll be people coming out saying, what sidewalk are you talking about? I've never heard of a Brookville
And maybe there's a way to roll these questions into one about the zoning text amendment, which was more housing now. And then before that was the attainable housing strategies. And it's kind of a rolling thing at this point. And there's state stuff and county stuff. So it's like, how do we ask these questions in a kind of a generic way where we can ask the same question again next year and run a trend analysis off of it and stuff.
Oh, good. By the way, my retort to you wasn't as a demand to have the question in the survey. I just wanted to be very clear that while there's been a 5-year process of getting to the point of taking a vote to move forward on the project, the reality is that the project is very much in our front windshield and we're hitting it right now. Everything that happened in the past was leading up to the point for a decision for it to occur this fiscal year. Right. So this is not to pass. This is gonna happen, and all the issues and everything that comes with it are gonna be front and center over the next couple of months.
Among some of the other, yeah, well, some of the other projects we've done, it was the replacing all the streetlights, repaving all the streets. That was the
Yeah.
biggest check I ever wrote. And I guess they're the big ones that we've dealt with.
Anyway. All good.
So do we have direction here to kind of reword it into a generic question about, are you getting enough information about capital projects?
For example, then you
For
could
example,
use,
for
for
those like
example,
Streetlights.
yeah.
Is that good?
But if you put streetlights in there, people will say, what? They're changing our streetlights again?
Are we gonna do streetlights?
Good
What?
point.
We just got
No,
them.
no, we're not getting these streetlights. We're good.
Past project,
Yeah,
okay, anyways, work out the wording. Okay, now Susan's, about parties.
Oh, there was one more, unless you want, it was just getting through the question. So, and the last question I had to do with the
Zoning.
volunteer.
Oh,
I think Michael said he might include the ZTA,
I
but
haven't included it yet though, but
I'll
well,
leave it to you.
but I mean, the volunteer question, I really liked those.
that came up about 2 years ago.
That's the one I wanted you to talk about.
That came up 2 years ago, and there was, have you thought about volunteering? Why haven't you? What's the problem? And so,
We
so
can
that
ask-
was included.
And we can ask that question as a if this, then that statement, which so if they say yes, we say, well, then great. And then if they say no, no, I'm not
Why
interested.
not?
Well, why not? Like what's turning you from volunteering or running for office?
Yeah. Okay, yeah,
Does the council agree?
Yeah.
That that's a good question?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
and then we can compare it. We asked this I think a couple of times in the past.
Sorry.
Okay, Susan, do we have a question on
On
events of limited
very small scope events, I'm
scope
fine with
events?
not putting on a survey if, I mean, I don't think there's a large appetite in the community to do these, and I've heard a lot of feedback suggesting that it is not a popular expenditure. So I'm fine not putting it on the survey if everybody's kind of willing to really think about it as a council on whether that's the best way to.
It was really just this last year where they started doing small events. They did the ice skating event that I think they had maybe 6 people come to.
Mhm.
It wasn't intended to be small.
Right.
Right.
So, yeah,
And
well,
the-
yeah, I
and
mean,
the movie was smaller
and
too.
the offsite, at.
But Andrew got
Babylon
his
movie.
snacks, so
I
it
know,
wasn't a
I got
waste,
the
yeah.
best bang for the buck on those snacks.
Yeah, it does
Mhm.
seem,
$100.
it does seem
But
like,
I mean,
Good.
so those are the actual examples? I mean, maybe,
No, I threw in a couple of,
well, I'm just saying, I know you did the beer brewing in the basement, all that stuff. But, I
but
don't know
the
how the
wine
first,
tasting was proposed.
yeah, okay. I don't know how the first VMA Halloween party, how well that was attended 20 years ago. You got to build it up, and lessons were learned, I think, from the CEC picking a different night or a different time for a movie night, things like that. I mean, lesson learned. I'm not saying,
The concern
suggesting,
is not that there will only be a few people who turn out, as there were only a few with the ice skating, which was a
Yeah.
good idea, and
yeah,
it was,
yeah,
it was a.
Yeah, so
I
there,
feel like we have a
attempt.
community that
It
wants
is-
more offerings, and then the CEC comes up with great ideas, and half a dozen people show
But the
up.
concern I have is that the maximum scope is like 30 of our
ticketed
residents.
events because of
yeah,
COVID.
so the
And
question is,
so
do we
it's
deliberately,
very limited.
yeah,
And
do we,
there are bound to be people who are saying, why are we spending
Yeah,
$40 per person, I think, or something?
yeah.
well, the
On,
thing is, if you have a number of limited popularity events, somebody might be included in one of them.
yeah,
You have 6 of them and you're not interested in knitting, but you're interested in the tatting.
whatever.
My only
That
two,
was a pretty good.
Tatting? That was not bad. Arthur.
Okay,
I mean, who
so,
does tatting anymore?
the only.
It's different.
The only 2 cents I would add, I'm not too, let's just say I'm not, it's not a lot, it's not a major advocacy point for me to see this in the survey as treasurer, simply because, first of all, I see Keith, and I know that when they plan an event, whether it's for a small number of people or for in terms of turnout, a small number of people or a large turnout, it's with the heart of bringing us together. So I think, our de facto mayor has that sort of purpose of bringing us together. And so, but we recognize that not every event may have the turnout that was expected. So I'd rather kind of look at it, as Andrew is saying, as a, let's learn, right? So if we do an event and that event may have a smaller turnout, we can then in the planning, and when it comes up for another budget, we can have that discussion and say, did it really have the reach? And maybe there's some other things we could do as opposed, you see what I'm getting at?
You look at the movie nights, okay, we could have filled, very well attended. We could have filled the Avalon with that, the number of folks that showed up at the park. So I mean,
But
it's
the
not
thing
that
is,
limited.
the problem is, they
Well, no,
may
that
have come to the
wasn't the
park, but
event.
not the Apple.
Yeah.
I
I
understand.
mean, that one would have held 125 people,
Yeah.
which is what we should be aiming for in my estimation, and
phenomenal
not
success.
30 people.
Thank
Well,
you.
let me give you an example of an event that was very successful, but with a limited number, was the first aid session that we had. And it was designed, they can only handle, 10 people, I think, or 12? It was worthwhile, but we could do that, if there was only 12 people can attend one event, and more wanted, you hold more of them. So that was one, and I don't remember if the village, did the community engagement did not organize that. You
I did that,
organized
and I was
it.
for both, volunteers as well as staff.
Right.
For that one.
So that was a limited range of people, and
What was the
successful.
cost involved in that? It was minimal.
Yeah, it was minimal. Yeah.
And also there's a public safety component
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
as opposed to just a social.
Okay, so do we include a question on that on the survey?
It sounds like this is a council's decision. Every one of these events that comes up is gonna, the
Yeah.
council has to vote on, so.
Yeah,
So-
I'm fine not putting
Okay.
it on there,
Okay, so we'll deal with
as
it.
long as we deal with it.
Good, okay.
And I think we know from experience
Yes.
Most
that,
robust survey conversation we've ever had.
I love it.
well, and I think we know from experience that when residents feel unhappy or dissatisfied with something, they'll make it known in their comments. So if there's
They
any
will make it-
particular
Yeah.
event or thing that we may have supported that they didn't like, I'm sure we'll hear
Good.
about it.
Now is a chance that I see a few residents who want to apparently speak on this subject.
Why it's not resident comment
It's,
period?
Okay, we don't want to let them talk now.
They can add at the end. they can-
We'll can come back to you at the end.
Yeah, let's move. Let's
Okay,
move.
moving on. Next item is approve the council meeting minutes from the last meeting in September. I've read them. I move to approve the council meeting minutes from September 18th.
A second,
And
you can have
they
it.
all passed.
You can
Good.
have it.
All in favor, say aye.
Treasurer's report.
Excellent.
Sorry, you're next.
Page 16.
Thank you.
Almost. Sorry.
I will keep this brief. We are in good shape. I should probably put my reading glasses on for this. Really, there's no surprises here whatsoever. We're, on track, and the only thing I point out, as we know, that while I do this on a monthly basis, our income comes in spurts. So, if we see little fluctuations in terms of what's in the red of expected income versus actual income, that is not an alarm bell, because we know that our big tranches are yet to come.
November is the biggie. That'll give us some information.
Yeah, I mean, we do anticipate, given everything in flux within the county, state, and federal, that our community may take a hit. So we expect, as we talked about, that we may dip in terms of our income this year. So we will adjust for that accordingly. We have thankfully very good reserves, so we could fill that gap, but we will keep on top of it. The only other shout out, unless others have very specific questions, is thank you, Michael, and all the powers that be of including within our balance sheet the kind of benchmark between now and the prior year. So I think that's a really, really great. I was doing that in my own spreadsheet, but the fact you included it is awesome because you could really benchmark. And, you know, if you look very clearly, for example, our you know, accounts and our total current assets, you can see just how much we've gone up. So from last year at this point to now, you know, we're talking you know, over 250 or close to $250,000. This is on page 18 under current net assets. So again, just putting that out there in perspective.
Good, thank you. It's been a long time since we were in trouble. It was my first year on the council. Okay, Dara, we have not heard from the Anti-Semitism Committee for a while, and now is our chance.
No, yes, hi, thank you for having me. Hi to Zoom World. By way of background, I'm not sure if everyone's familiarity. 2 years ago, the VMA created the Anti-Semitism Awareness Task Force, and it was initially created with like a 1-year time period, and last year the task force came back and it was extended. It was extended with like no clear guidelines, like how long will it be extended? What do we have to do after a year? So I know it's now October, and I guess we were due with the report to you in July, so apologies for the delay. We've given you a written report, want to keep things brief, but the Anti-Semitism Awareness Task Force it's grateful that we've been able to serve this community just as a forum to provide timely news of anti-Semitic acts, which are happening. They're happening in our schools. Or Kodesh and Beth El were both vandalized within the past 6 months, where VMA residents are members. I mean, there was the shooting of 2 Israeli diplomats outside the Capitol Jewish Museum, like within the past 48 hours. There's reports in Politico of the swastikas on Capitol Hill. I mean, we're grateful that residents might not necessarily feel uncomfortable walking on the street, and also these are issues that are really affecting our community. Within the past year, we've been, you know, just circulating news to residents about what's going on, how they can help restaurants that have been vandalized, how they can support the Capitol Jewish Museum, and how they can really feel a sense of community. And we've been doing it free of charge. Like, there is no cost to the village to have this task force. So the question is really like, I mean, what does one need to show that it's beneficial to us all to have? I mean, I just heard a very heated and thoughtful conversation about, like, should there be something in the survey? And so I don't know what I'm asking you. I guess we're just asking, is this something that can continue? And I'm here to answer any questions. We've done this written write-up. And yeah, thanks for giving me this opportunity.
Okay. Don't go away.
I'm not going anywhere.
Just cutting
Yeah.
to the chase, and I just, so, but the recommendation is from the task force is to continue. Is that that's the?
Yes,
Okay.
our recommendation is that we are kind of providing this community, and it's weird to use the word beneficial and anti-Semitism like in the same paragraph. But we feel that we're really providing support and awareness and community at a time that it's really needed. And so the members of the task force, I mean, over the past 2 years, there have been some continued members and some old and new members, but to continue on, but also some guidance from the village, like, what would you like to see us do, or just continue as we're doing and just kind of like be there to provide support and education.
And Arthur, my question to the chair is, so unless there's any questions or discussion, ultimately you want to take a vote on extension or not today?
Yeah, well, yeah, I would like to, but I would also like to get views about, do we need a new mission statement, which I think we do. Yeah.
So as the liaison, and prospectively, I'd love to be the liaison again if the council votes to renew, and that's my hope that we will. You know, the original mission when I was chair and there were signatures being collected for us to do this throughout our neighborhoods. One of the initial, well, the singular mission really was to host at least one event to raise awareness. And I know that in the first year, there was at least one event. I know that we've worked on putting together events, and it's very challenging if it's not even issue specific, it's difficult to get residents to attend events, right? I mean, we all lead busy lives. But in the absence thereof, I feel like the task force did a great job with the help of Michael, who really turned things around very quickly to post on weekly wrap-ups, information and you know, just offering of the various things by the task force. So in that sense, I think nothing has changed since this issue became, you know, I think prevalent in this country 2 years ago and before. Of course, anti-Semitism has always existed. I think things have become even worse in many ways, even as perhaps things are improving, not necessarily, but improving in the Middle East. I just think it's a service that this task force feels pretty passionately, the members of the task force, to continue, as Dara said, at no cost to the village. I would hope we'd vote for it. I know there have been arguments saying, well, why don't we have a task force on other issues? Well, I'm always open and eager to discuss if there's something that is concerning and that requires a task force to consider that. This has been something that I think has been really important over the years, and I think it continues to be.
Any other?
I know that there, as I've said in the past, I know there are residents who, while they may support the mission or the purpose, not necessarily the mission, which has been vague over the past year, they also feel as if there are other groups that have been victimized, traumatized, vilified, and that it is inappropriate for our village to take a position, not to take a position, but to restrict the focus of a committee to one group when there are others. And I think you probably have heard this too, Michael. There are residents in our village who very deeply resent, including some of my Jewish friends and neighbors, say, this is not something we really want. Maybe before we continue, I mean, maybe it is a survey question, because I know that there are a lot of people who have very strong feelings, and they're probably not going to voice them to you, Andrew.
Yeah.
But I have heard them loud and clear.
So I understand that, and I feel like I've heard you say this in our previous conversation.
Yeah.
So here's my response. If there are residents here that feel like there are other groups being discriminated and that it shouldn't just be about anti-Semitism, okay?
Right.
Nothing stands in our way as a council to consider if there's a need and a desire for creating awareness of an issue where a certain set of our population is being discriminated, to create a task force or to create a set of rules where we can look into it and help residents through this. My biggest worry is if this is put into a survey, that people that are provided with the anonymity that any survey should provide them will create exactly why I think there's a need for an anti-Semitism awareness task force. Honestly, I'm just telling you the reality.
I understand, but I
So-
also understand that anonymity is sometimes the only way you will get to the truth
Yeah.
of.
And the
And
truth is that we, I believe, need an awareness task force because
So-
of that truth.
So I think it was Larry Wasson.
Please.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I don't know what protocol is here. two things. One, you'll see in the statement we wrote on the second page, it says, in the next year, we hope to broaden community involvement by reaching out more effectively to community members through interfaith resources. And then it goes on, one of the conversations we had this past year was how to bring both a rabbi and a clergyman or a priest or some other person to broaden the conversation to bring in. I agree with you, Susan. Last year after the AJC came in and did a presentation, I mean, I and other members did get email feedback that they didn't like that program. That wasn't within this past year. This past year, the only emails we got were positive. Thank you for sharing that information. I appreciated knowing that. So there may be people who aren't happy, for sure. You have lots of opinions, but I will say that was one of the reasons we changed the mission this year. We had the Stand Up Against Hate Blue Pins at the brunch at La Ferme, which is an organization that started against anti-Semitism, but now is against anti-hate. I mean, they had the commercial in the Super Bowl against, hate speech against Muslims. So it's a question of how you do that. And also anti-Semitism has been distinct.
First of all, thank you for that. And thank you, Susan. I just wanted to cover relatively briefly, just a couple things. First, just operationally, I think we want to, or at least I would like to distinguish a vote on extension versus the survey. So I'm prepared to do the vote on the extension. I'll explain my position on this. And in terms of the survey, I'm all for inclusion of questions on the survey, but if we were to do that, I would like it to be more impartial. So for example, I would want to ask us a question that perhaps, I know we already do this around meetings, right? So we probably don't need to because we already have it, but it should be for all our standing committees and task force, right? Everyone has an opportunity to say, did you attend a meeting for this task force or committee or event? And your satisfaction or something like that. So I rather than singling out a particular task force or committee, I think it's worthwhile to have that across the board for all our committees and task force, or not, but I just put that out there. So I want to distinguish the survey from the extension vote. And the extension vote, I just want to also put something out. I'm sure Andrew, you saw it, and Dara as well, and others, but even today in the Washington Post,
I brought it with me.
I'm sure you saw this, but I was really, I don't have the words in many languages to convey the thoughts on it, but the idea that it basically 1 in 8 Jewish Americans who were surveyed, I believe, now this is from memory, had shared that they are fearful or hiding their identity because of backlash. So I just put this out there that, to me, in addition to all the other events, and then, dear friends by 1 or 2 degrees of separation who were murdered not long ago, literally within miles of our community, the need is as important as ever. With that said, I did serve, as Andrew knows, as a co-chair or co-liaison for a year, and then I spun off. During that time, I never heard, or no one had reached out to me with backlash or saying they didn't want this. So I haven't been privy to the information that you may have been, people have spoken to you about. But what did come up several times was the scope. And I did look carefully at the original mandate from the county. If we remember, that's what kind of spurred it. And so I just wanted to share a suggestion that maybe Andrew and you can take back is, I would feel actually quite comfortable with the idea if, again, just throwing out illustratively and as scope to work through, is anti-Semitism and intolerance, or anti-Semitism and something, so that it does kind of provide, so folks feel there's an inclusion, because we know that Muslims, we know that other groups have been targeted, and they do feel that this is a safe space for them to come to. It's not simply for one group or one identity, but it's a place where anyone can come to. So I put that out as a suggestion because frankly, I would feel, as much as I will support and vote for the extension, I would feel even more indebted and thrilled about this to the idea that if other groups and other folks within our community feel they'd be included if they had issues that they felt they needed to come to in a safe space for you to kind of
Yeah, and
amplify.
I feel like there were conversations at some point during these task force meetings that we have to be true to this issue, but we can also evolve
100%.
and it could be renamed and turned into a task force on,
Anti-discrimination.
anti-discrimination, tolerance, intolerance.
This
Sure.
is not
You
a
know.
quid
No, no,
pro
no,
quo.
no.
It's just,
But I
we
mean, I
know we have
agree.
LGBT.
It
and
might
we've got a
be
lot.
more efficient than saying there are community members that feel like there's discrimination going on that we're not addressing. Instead of creating more task forces, making it one
Yes.
comprehensive task force, an
Yeah.
umbrella task force
Right.
that addresses intolerance. It might change the makeup as well, I think it's predominantly Jewish community members that are members of this task force right now. Which is great. I think, the more the merrier and broadening the scope, and we can work on that.
Yeah, my concerns, I share Susan's concerns, and I think that this suggestion removes some of my concerns. Now, here's the issue. Who's gonna write a mission statement for this? Would you want to sit down
Sure.
with the
Yes.
putative committee members?
And one additional member, ChatGPT, will be my my early drafter. Huh?
To come up with
I'm
a
not gonna use
mission,
Grok. I'm gonna use
to come up with a
I'm not
mission
gonna use
statement.
Elon.
Be sure to proofread.
And Andrew, let me throw back out at both of you and the task force is that original charter that the county came up with, actually, there's language in there that was a bit more expansive. So it's just something to put out.
And by the way, I think it goes without saying, and we've heard this before, that our task force, the one we created, did more than any of the others. The other neighboring communities had signatures and nothing was done beyond the signatures that were collected on this effort. So I
And
thank the
we've
task
been
force.
A leader, and I think we should continue to be a leader. And I think, as we've had in conversations, how can we broaden it to be more about stomping out hate? How do we feel more inclusive?
Yeah.
The irony that, I agree, we need a mission statement. How do you just kind of work in this amorphous universe? I'm happy to work with you. and
Let's do
draft.
it.
Good, okay.
So can we vote in the abstract without having a mission
We-
statement to?
Yeah, we will
I mean,
move to,
yeah.
Arthur,
give me
I
some
just wanna-
language. Go, what?
Ron, was there anything that you wanted to chime in that we may have a line here that we're not thinking of or?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Just
This
wanted to
is-
make sure we're not.
This is
we're not
perfectly
putting the-
appropriate.
Okay, awesome.
Okay. So,
If I could just say one
Go
thing,
ahead.
I'm just thinking in terms of language. I don't know if this goes with what you are hoping, but the word division, divisiveness. I think that might be a word that you may want to consider using.
To prevent the.
Yes,
Okay,
to encourage the opposite of,
so
cohesion.
we need then a motion.
Should
What-
we write the mission statement and then come back next month and actually vote to?
So we
Yeah.
direct the committee with the help of
Sure.
Andrew
yeah,
to come up with a message statement to be
Okay.
introduced next
so we have
month.
a month.
You have your homework.
Excellent.
Good idea, thank you.
But
for
just
even
to be
giving us the
clear, I
opportunity.
wouldn't characterize the feedback I've gotten as backlash against it. It's really just
Concern.
concern
I get it.
and also to some extent a feeling that the council sort of exceeded its scope,
Huh.
that it's not necessarily, and I think as other
And
jurisdictions.
there might be community members that don't like having a bullseye on them by having a task force like this because it draws attention.
I think that was,
To the Jewish community
that
and
was
the issue,
actually
so,
one thing that was stated.
yeah. Anyway, look forward
But
to
anyway, I
collaborating.
think you're a great
Okay.
representative
Good.
and I
Thank
appreciate
you.
your report.
Definitely.
You'll see me back.
Yeah, next month.
Whatever meeting that is.
We'll try to put it earlier in the agenda.
That's-
So you don't have
This
to
has
stick
been
around.
great. My kids wanted to come.
They should bring
Them.
the kids.
Past their bedtime.
Get them.
Yeah,
Get
thank
those
you.
civic-minded
Okay,
All right. Thank you.
moving on.
Kids here, we'll have to
Thank
make
you.
it.
The
a-
next
I'd
committee
love that.
is the election committee. And we have before us a number of documents, a proposed schedule. So let's go through these one by one. First, the schedule. It's in front of us.
Mhm.
It is basically taken from last year, changed by a day or two to meet the current calendar. I believe we have to approve this.
That's correct,
Right,
Arthur.
we have to formally approve the schedule, correct?
Yes.
That's correct.
Um,
Wow.
I've looked, as a schedule, it looks like a
Looks
schedule.
like it's good.
And unless anyone has any questions or comments, I move that we accept the proposed schedule for the FY 2026 VMA election as submitted by the election committee.
I'll second.
I second.
Alexis,
Okay.
all in favor, say aye.
Good, aye, good. We then have a number of proposals. Let's talk about this proposal. The committee last year came up with an idea to jazz up the election by providing three new things. One is what does the council do? I kind of like that and change it to what does a council member do? And we do have a draft document. My very boring one pager, my wife looked at this, she said, anyone who reads this is going to stay off. It was put through OpenAI and came up with a jazzy, bulleted document that actually looks good. So I think we have something to work with there. But the committee also has two other ideas, an annual impact report. And this is saying that here's what the village does. Here's where it spends its money. Here's its project, a kind of, what you say, a one-page flyer. Another one would be an annual meeting, an open forum where we do the same things. Less thrilled about those documents, but if anyone has anything to think about that, say about it, I'm willing to hear what they have to say. Then these are thought of as electioneering, get the community interested, get the community involved. What do the council do? What do the council members do? What is the scope of the work over the course of the year, the annual impact report, and then a kind of an open forum to get people involved, all leading up to the election.
If I may add just briefly here, Arthur, thank you for that very good introduction. This is Marty from the election committee. We also have two of our other members here this evening. One of the things that we really were concerned about is that people didn't seem to be tuned in. And we have had a couple of elections in a row now with, elections being uncontested. We need, more voter turnout, and we also need more candidates to really have contested elections. And that's healthy for the village in terms of our civic culture. And we looked at what are sort of the classic ways that you do increase turnout and increase candidates running. And these are standard elements to do that. The three-part process, the first one, thank you again, Arthur, and other council members who've contributed already. That I think is well on its way. The second part about, show them the dollars, because people do respond to dollar figures. It's another way to get voter turnout and candidate recruitment up. And it's also good information in general. One of the suggestions at our committee meeting, I think from you, Alexa, was that that some of that information could be put in the annual village directory, basics for dollar signs. But I think wherever else it goes, that and the open community forum, what do you think? Asking people face to face, what do you think? Is one of the most effective ways to get people to vote and to run for office. It also helps to include other kinds of volunteerism, but our concern is about the election turnout and the candidacies. All three of these are classic ways to increase turnout and candidates. The point that George McAleese made earlier about this being completely not candidate related is really important. We feel that very strongly, which is why this is time sensitive, because we would want these documents to come out this fall and winter. We would want to have the open community forum, what do you think, possibly in November, along with the survey. I think that dovetails really nicely. But none of it should be happening anywhere near the actual cycle of the election, because it needs to be completely unbiased, not candidate related. And so the timing here is sensitive. If we're going to do this year, we need to do it fairly quickly. And we were asking the council to move ahead with it quickly. I think that the second piece, the one that has the financial pie charts and all, is good village information. In any case, wouldn't take too long to do. And that's key information. And then if we did an open, what do you think, open forum, as the proposal, suggests, that could happen over the winter as well. Right now, the only thing we have in December is the proposed community engagement committee. Candles, lights around, some weekend in December. So there's really an opportunity in December to have that kind of what do you think meeting. And so we recommend all three parts of this package because we think they're all going to be helpful in a lot of ways. But for the election, they need to happen sooner rather than later. Do you have any other questions about them?
I mean, I just in terms of an open forum, what's been, and I'm sorry I've missed your meetings, Marty, but what's been the participation of the election committee in terms of folks not on the committee? Because I think it's aspirational to think that at an open forum about the elections and council member jobs that you'll have any turnout.
Well, the only time this was actually done was back in 2017. I went back to the records, and the election committee did it then, but again, did it well away from the actual cycle of the election itself. They did an open community forum at one of our members' homes, and we had more than 40 people there. And we had folks from the various committees speak about what their committees did. It was very much a get to know your neighborhood, get to know your community event that had the election, it was about raising interest in the election, but it wasn't just that. It was much broader. And I think there were one or two council members who came, as I recall, and talked about what it's like to serve on the council.
In cycle?
That happened in 2017. And it did.
I'm saying, like, were the council members in cycle that showed up there? Because that
was that a candidates forum?
No.
It was an open house, and I will just say this: they had great snacks.
Yeah, it was an open.
I remember it, Susan.
It was a social event.
Everything, Marty.
It was a social event.
He does remember everything.
Wasn't it a social event?
It was, yes. It was an open house sponsored by the election committee,
I thought it was sponsored by the party committee. I thought it was sponsored by the party committee.
No, it was the election committee that did it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I guess the question is timing and if it gives unfair advantage to those that are in cycle.
Yeah.
And that's why the timing is important. It should be done, I would say, November or
Probably
December.
right now.
Yeah, like right now. And next year, the report. Next year, the reports could be, the updated community impact report with the dollar signs could be done, on June 30th. I mean, that would be ready at the end of the year to sort of highlight what was done that fiscal year. And so this is actually a very doable proposal, I think. And in 2017, the last time we did something similar, we not only had later on after this event, we had an increase in voter turnout. I checked the numbers, and we also had a contested election. We had 3 good candidates for 2 seats. So it was successful. And I would like to see us kind of incorporate that here. I mean, these are standard items, so I would hope you would vote yes on this.
I'd like to go back to the records to see what controversies were brewing in the community for it to be a contested election, because that seems to always be the right recipe.
I think I don't know. I can't remember.
Yeah, I think it had to do with trash can pickup.
There was that issue, Susan. Yep, among others.
Go ahead.
So first, let me just point of order. How did you want to?
Well,
I didn't want
is this something we should go? Is this something we should move forward with? And who's going to do
taking
it?
it one by one?
Yeah, and if you suggest we go ahead, you have to do the duck. You have to do it.
So a couple things. I like I think the first point. It seems like it's already baked. you know, and if that is helpful for folks,
It's already baked.
I mean, your
What does your
document,
council do document?
what does your council do? I don't think there's any
Oh, that,
controversy
the
around
first,
that.
well, the
I,
first
I
one.
think that's the least controversial.
Yeah,
It's
and I-
informative, and so I could vote on
And I
that.
put that together. It's already-
Unless-
It's halfway,
As I
three
think
quarters of the way there.
Ron may have pointed, you know, just the idea, we do a scrub to make sure we don't have anything in there that
Right.
isn't statutorily like what you actually have to do.
Oh.
So, you know, but as long as it's scrubbed, it's great.
Yes,
I
it is
I would say
correct.
the council should make that final document as well. So it's you all that sign off on that
Yeah,
document.
of course.
But whoever votes
Well,
for it
well,
has to,
Whoever drafts it, it needs the council, as is the case on anything committee or task force related, has to have the final
Right.
vote on it
Yeah.
and or tweaking and you know.
and whoever votes for this has to do it.
Oh. How about if you vote present?
Here.
So here's the other couple things.
I'm
that-
serious,
on that
who's gonna
list.
do it?
What, the
Well, it
first
sounds like
one?
you've been
I
working on it
already did the first one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so the first one being something that needs to be refined?
a final draft.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, feel free to continue
I'll-
with your work
right. Okay, but, and then there's the next one,
for a
the,
sense of accomplishment.
Yeah, so I just want to comment on this, and I think we're going to include the survey question around volunteerism, including have you run, and that should provide us more information. But I just want to be very clear that anytime we've had, whether it's resident comments, general comments, or if we've had a survey question, the preponderance of data that's come in is not about lack of information. It's been about time. And so I'm looking at some of these things, and I'm all for it. But we have very detailed financial information around the audit. I mean, there is exhaustive information about not only what we do, how we do it, and by line item. So this information is available, and I see folks, we don't have a huge turnout, but I see some folks who are on this meeting tonight who I know can quote actual numbers in our budget from last year for certain services. So I'm not convinced that having an additional document on top of what we have is going to get people. And so I'm just putting out there that we have a survey question. If we get a preponderance of information that comes back in the next month or two, which will be before this needs to come out, I'm the first one to jump up and say, sure, I'll do a one pager, but there is so much information out there. I don't believe it's lack of information that is causing people not to run. It's time. The other,
Just on that one, just to piggyback on it, and it doesn't seem to me like that's an election committee task anyway. This is a council document that we would put together, if at all. I don't think it's an election committee one.
and I know we've talked about just putting out there, I do like the thought on visualization, so pie charts and things. So literally, at the next meeting, and I'll when you say about who gets to do homework, I'm happy to do that. I love graphs. So I literally can take the expenditure analysis that is typically in a table, and we can have a nice visual with different colors. You've got that. I'll do it, but I don't think that is going to create a huge turnout for recruitment. The third, you know, I don't know about the history of the event, but that's almost a decade ago. And I think things have changed. We've seen it across the board in terms of turnout. And the other thing, when I think of the sniff test, I do feel a little bit uncomfortable around an election committee getting into the idea of recruiting candidates. Whether it's incumbents who show up or others, it then gets into a line. So I think the forums and events that have been most powerful are when private citizens host something at their house and they do something. Now, I'm not drawing a strong line on that, but I feel the idea of an election committee getting into the idea of hosting events around recruiting candidates just kind of gets into that sniff test.
Yeah. And I know that the election committee would never want to portray it as such, but it's too adjacent to this particular issue. And I know there've been accusations that election committees past have or members thereof have tried to recruit candidates.
And I do want to just be very clear, this all gets to the data of, I don't believe it's lack of forums or lack of information. It's folks have expressed time. And I personally, every election cycle, I always reach out to folks saying, hey, I think that you would make a great candidate. Why don't you run? And that's whether I'm an incumbent or not, because I love to have participation. And the biggest response I always get in those personalized, individualized conversations are time. I just don't have the time. I would love to, but I can't. And maybe in an off year they will. The other thing I do want to address too, is I know all of us as council members and also former council members, I'm thinking of Katie, but I'm also thinking of folks like Tiffany Cessna and others. When I was debating about whether I was going to run the first time, I remember the most thoughtful conversations I had was with Tiffany, who's literally spent 3, 4, 5 conversations with me on the phone and really very thoughtful, asking and addressing every question I had. So I think all of us are very open, again, whether we're incumbents or not, the idea of if anyone is interested, come. We would love to talk to you about it and get you to come out. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Can I comment real quick? On the annual impact report, we've tried a couple different versions of doing an annual report at the end of the fiscal year. So I think we can revamp that and include some pie charts and make it a little more visual. I tried to do a video 2 years ago and it was long and boring. I think we got five views on YouTube, we can improve that and revamp that. So I think that's something we can do from the village office's perspective. And then the council meeting in May is already called the annual meeting. And that's where we adopt our budget. And that is right after the election happens. So if there's an opportunity at that point to like blow that up and make that an open house and make it, where we're talking about all the different things that happened that year or, how it works, maybe that's an opportunity to put an educational element in there. But again, I agree, that's not a election committee perspective.
Elizabeth, I see your hand up. She's from the election committee, but I want to go back to the point that one of the points Jeff just raised, and that is, I'm reading from the charter here, an election committee. I read this to you a few weeks ago. All elections shall be managed by the election committee. And the committee shall operate according to rules and procedures adopted by the council. So we have the rules and procedures that we adopted last year. And the job now is to manage the election. And I think this gets to the point that we are not asking for promotional material, promotional ideas, new policies, other things that related to election.
May I just jump in real quick? I know as Keith needs to
I
leave.
respectfully
because
interrupt the meeting.
I just want to
Wish Jeff a happy birthday. I'm from the CEC. It's a day late, actually.
And this is under $25 and it's a new fiscal year. So I think I'm good. But as Keith is leaving, I just want to say, we do have the engagement events coming up like Halloween and we're going to have a holiday party. And those are always informal events where recruiting and other things can happen. So I just want to put out that we do have these natural forums where people come and you can talk to get people to get interest if they want.
The one thing at those events I feel like is important for future events is the name tags. We've had them in the past, but just to identify council members so folks can actually approach them and ask them questions. So maybe there's a way to formalize that so people know who you are. You see that with our local delegates when they show up here, they always have their little name tags.
And say that delegate.
Yeah.
Elizabeth, you have a quick comment?
Unmute you.
There you go. You're good.
No, that was Marty.
Oh.
Elizabeth.
I think there may be a misunderstanding about the motivation of these 3 pieces that were sent forward. It wasn't things for or by the election committee. It's the election committee asking the council to do something about more public awareness, more marketing about what you all do. And that with the idea that the more you do that, the more people, residents will have an idea of what's going on, and they just may become more interested. We don't have any tools. These are tools about your work, not about our work, but we felt it would be useful when we go out for nominations to be able to distribute at the same time two things. One is, what does a typical council member do? What are the generic responsibilities, which I don't think it exists at the moment in a public forum. And secondly was a one-page, what happened last year? Where did the money go? What are the 5 biggest expenditures, or what was the impact in the community? You all should be, I would think, want to produce something like that. It's not, in other words, it's not to help the election committee. I mean, indirectly, yes, but it's something that we felt would be good for the community to have, and there seems to be an absence of it. Jeff's saying the information already exists, but we know that people have to dig for it deep on the website, all in little, different pieces, different locations. It's not easy, and nobody's going to take time to inform themselves out in the community doing that, I don't believe. So if they want a quick look at, do I have time to put my name out there for nominations? Give me some idea about what's the time commitment? What are some of the things we might be involved in, et cetera. So that's what you have before you. The last piece on the forum, the idea sprang out of Chevy Chase Village, because when Chevy Chase Village has their budget meeting in the springtime, they have an open forum. Now, the issue there was, I didn't feel last year, I was at the meeting, that the community had an adequate notification that starting now, 2 months before you all make the decision on the budget, these are what we're thinking. This is our tentative budget plan, and we invite your comments. I don't think that's being done, and maybe you don't need a forum. Maybe you could send a letter in the village newsletter inviting people's comments on major budget items going forward, and they can send you their feedback. The idea was, give people a chance to comment before you put it out for a vote, because if you call it an open forum and you've already got the whole budget finalized in front of you and you're going to vote on it that night, it really isn't an open forum. So it's too late. So this was what was behind that. And we, as I said, Chevy Chase Village also has something similar. And that's where the idea sprang from, that perhaps more could be done so that it could be a more democratic, more transparent process on how those decisions are made. And that's about it. The last thing I wanted to say while I've got the microphone is, and it had to do with the annual survey you were talking about. In the report of the election committee of the September 22nd meeting, there was attached to our report, section 3, notes from the fiscal 25 election forum. And in that 2-page description, there are 27 suggestions from either candidates that were running for office or the community on things that could be done under the following categories: mechanisms to enhance priority setting by the council, urgent action items, how to enhance participation in council meetings and committees, how to build a stronger community, and community services. So I encourage you, whoever's going to draft the survey, to go back and have a look at section 3, because those at the time, we were surprised at the good ideas that came out there that might be useful in the survey that you're drafting together. Just, don't want to forget that was in your minutes, right, our prior meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So I think that we can put that to rest now. We are coming up with the first item suggested, the second and third. We will think of as we put together budgets and other things. And Michael does a review. So let us move on then.
I do, Arthur, I
Okay,
do want to
yeah.
just comment on
Go ahead.
one thing, and I know Michael, I saw his kind of, I just know what he was thinking, because I think this question has come up before, is we do have every year, as long as I've been treasurer, and I know Arthur, you, is we have an open meeting, an open forum, which predates our annual meeting, which is required. And in that open meeting, we go through the budget from the prior year to then plan the budget for the next year. And that is an open meeting, and it's publicized, in advance. And I know for at least the last 4 years or so, despite that, we've had an average of no more than 1 or 2 residents come. And so all I'm sharing is that is not a finger pointing exercise. I'm just putting out there that it gets back to we do this and we do it. And those folks who do show up provide fabulous input, and it does shape, how we think about the budget, and has even influenced the advocacy for certain programs. But I just want to share that we do have these forums when it comes to, because we take it very seriously in terms of what we've done, how we program it, what the budget is, and then how that influences the next. And these are open meetings.
Maybe
So
we need to step up our social media.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's do some YouTube content.
Seriously.
But I do want to
Who
share,
manages
though,
our TikTok?
like I said, that's why I
We'll
think it
get
gets
some
back to the
kids.
survey.
Not happening.
Is the thing is that it gets back to, this is not necessarily an awareness issue.
Right.
We
It's-
live in one of the most highly educated, highly informed, subdivisions in the entire country. And to assume it's because people lack information, we don't have to
insulting.
assume. The feedback
It
has been
insults our
simply about
population.
time and the ability to find that time to run. So I just want to, there's that marginal, I'm all for adding more information, but I think with the survey question, we can tap more into this. But this has never been about the fact that folks have felt they haven't had information. It's they haven't had time.
Do we know demographically if the community has become more young families versus
I
retirees?
wrote about that in one of our
Yeah.
recent,
There's an article on the website if you want to read about it.
I wrote it
Pass.
about a month ago.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
A
No,
newsletter 2
it
months ago.
hasn't.
But I mean, I'm just saying, like, it hasn't.
No, it's been up and down.
It's up and
It's
down.
got older and it's gotten younger at the same time.
yeah.
That's a middle age that got
Because
squeezed.
to me, and thankfully Arthur took on the chairmanship, which is really the only volunteer position on the council that's time intensive, with the exception of the time when you're going through, budget work and all that. I mean, I did it for 2 years and it was a time suck. But as an at-large backbencher now, that's fantastic. So I
So
think
you can run the TikTok account.
when I retire, I will run for chair of this council again. Yeah, the TikTok account, exactly. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, no, I was just gonna totally agree with Jeff, and I was thinking, we do all these things, and maybe this is just feedback, and Elizabeth, I appreciate the feedback, like you're telling me how to do my job better. And now I'm gonna go ask Chevy Chase what they do for their budget
Yeah.
process and how they get people to show up to those meetings.
Yeah.
So that's all really good feedback, but I will push back a little bit, like this council, since I've been here for the last 3 years, this council has taken feedback about the budget very seriously from residents. We have passed new programs that came from the ground up, came from the survey, came from recommendations we heard from people. And we have moved forward on projects, and we have 2 task force that came from the community. It really wasn't a top-down council driven kind of thing.
Yeah.
We spent over $100,000 on a water engineer last year as a result of a volunteer task force. That is something that we should be proud of, and we can always do better, of course. But this council does work really hard at listening to its residents, and so.
Yeah, I think.
Okay, moving on. We have a request from the election committee to hire a contractor to help put together the voter roll. We did this 2 years ago, and they would like to have that again. I would first, before getting your views on that, ask the question about whether our ongoing maintenance of the resident voter list, does it seem at this point, since the last major update, to need a contractor to devote themselves to it?
And before you answer that question, can I just, for the record, clarify something? Because I was contacted by former chair Katie Philipchek Howard, based on the election committee's submission of its material for today's council meeting, and she told me, and I feel very strongly to relay this publicly here, that she did not in fact recommend hiring a contractor to help verify the village voter roll every other year. In fact, she suggested that it could be considered every couple of years at the discretion of the village manager if he believed it would also assist with the village directory. Those were her words, and I just want to make sure that that is clear. And she felt strongly, and I'm not sure if she reached out to other members of the council, but I just wanted to report on that.
Good, thank you. Okay.
So to answer your question, I think the directory is in really good shape. We printed the most recent directory in January of this year. And then we had the election process, and they, verified their voter roll, which was very similar with just a couple, moves and stuff. But that actually helps that I actually go through and update the spreadsheet. So I've been updating the village office list every single month with move-ins and move-outs that I'm aware of. And if someone
So it's a
dies or
continuously updated process.
correct. Yep, it's updated every single month. And then also we launched the texting alert program this year
Right.
called Regroup.
Yeah.
And for that, I needed to get everyone's phone number. So I've actually gone through a lot of process to try to get everyone's phone number. And I have the list right now. As of the first of this month, there's 611 people on our list. And we know there was quite a few moves this summer, and maybe related to some of the job stuff that's happened in the area with NIH and everything else. But the list, as far as I'm aware, is very good. You'll remember when we did hire the contractor, Julian Lampier, in 2022, that was
2024, Michael.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was 23.
Well, so it was 2 years ago, but then 2 years ago from this next election, which will be the 26th election, so 2024, whatever.
Right.
The previous year's election committee had really just used the county voter roll. We know the county voter roll is very, very out of date. So it did take a lot of work at that year. It took a lot of work to remove about 100 names that had just kind of been left on the voter roll. So it's a voter roll audit or a voter roll cleanup, which was very successful, I think. And the list is been maintained ever since then.
Good. So it's your view, we don't need a contractor this year?
For this purpose, I don't think so. I mean, I imagine there's going to be 20, 25 names. They're going to have to change from last year's voter roll,
Okay.
so that's
Any
probably the
discussion, comment?
I just had a couple questions. So I'm sorry, the math, I know it's always tricky, fiscal year and all
Yeah,
that. So-
exactly.
So we're talking, what, 2 years now, roughly?
2 years
2
ago,
years,
right?
okay.
Two election cycles ago.
And that was a major effort. Do we remember, I apologize, I don't have this off the top of my head, but roughly what the cost of that was?
I don't have the total cost.
It was about $8,000. This is Marty, if I may join in. It's in your report. It was about $8,000.
Okay,
And we could do it for half that this time. And again, I want to point out that this is a major burden on the election committee. That audit with Julian back in 2024 was supervised by the committee, and that took about 15 hours. But actually doing the voter roll verification last year took about 40 hours of the committee's time, because it's a very complicated process in the sense that we start with Michael's village office list, and Michael, kudos from the committee for keeping that office list more up to date. That really helps. As you say, the county list is pretty useless. County list, last time I checked, had 200 people on it who are not actually residents of Martin's Additions and cannot legally be sent a ballot. So county isn't helpful. But the village office list, I want to just clarify here, is critical. It has to include everybody over the age of 18. And Michael, you've done a good job of doing that. It also needs to include, for voter roll purposes, people like caregivers and students who are away at school but are still legally voters here because this is their legal voting residence. And so that office list, they call it the directory, if you will, is not the same as the voter roll. The voter roll is a larger document. It includes people who are not on Michael's office list. And legally, I mean, it's a legal document. It's what's used to issue valid ballots. The state law and our own charter require that we can only give ballots to people who are actually residents. And so there is a fairly intensive process spelled out in Appendix A on the voter regs that are currently approved to really verify that legally for voter roll purposes. And the better the village office list is, the easier that task is. But last year, the committee, with a pretty good list, Michael had already started cleaning up the office list in good ways. We still had more than 80 people who we could not confirm and had to send letters to, which is part of the regulations that we have to do. And of those 80 people, there were 57 who got the follow-up note from the committee that says, you know, we have voted to remove you because you didn't respond and we couldn't verify that you were a resident. You know, here's the appeals process. Please let us know if we were wrong. And I will say that I was proud of the committee's thoroughness and that none of the people filed an appeal. So clearly we'd made correct decisions. But having 80 some voters last year that we had to send a letter to, and enough 57 that needed to get the second letter, which is legally required for voter roll maintenance, it was a lot of work. And having
Marty, I don't know what a contractor would do to help you with those.
Contractor would be able to make a whole lot of calls, would be able to check the obituaries, which is one of the things we have to do, would be able to check the move-in, move-out records, which Michael has got much better. That should be a lot easier this year. That's part of the cost savings. But we've got a lot of people we have to check. Roughly 200 people a year need to be verified as new residents. We had 62 new residents to add. We had 57 people we removed. That's 100 right there, but that's after we all did the checking of the larger group that we had to verify. It's a very technical process. It is spelled out in the Appendix A to the regs. And the committee did it thoroughly. Like I said, nobody appealed. We must have made the right decisions. But it's a lot of work, and it's a lot to ask for a volunteer committee that is also at the same time preparing the ballot packets, doing the forum, doing the reports, you know, on each piece of it, because we do a lot of public information about elections to make them transparent. There's already a lot of work in handling the election management process for this committee. And the voter roll verification is intense, and it has to be done by the end of March. There's a real short time period between January.
Okay, thank you, Marty. Jeff, you had a.
And so I had 3 questions. I covered the first 2. When, so a couple of years ago, which is pretty recent. And Andrew, thanks for bringing to our attention what Katie had provided was her recommendation was to, you know, ask our manager and also with input from the committee as well. So Marty, thank you. That was very helpful. The cost factor. And then the third is just need. So I just want to get an understanding of, is this sort of audit process that is normative to happen every year or 2? Do other sections do it? I mean, what does the world fall apart and does our election fall down if we don't do it this year? I'm just trying to get an understanding of what is the best practice, because what's the need to do this? I'm hearing this idea, there's a preponderance of work, but I just want to get an understanding of what needs to be done and why is this essential now versus we don't do this every 4 or 5 years.
In fact, it was never done until 2 years ago.
No, that's not true, Arthur. If you could, I was served on the committee from 2015 through 2020, and we verified the voter rolls every year. Gene Sperling talked about the procedures we used.
And not by an outside consultant, Marty.
Not by an outside consultant, no. The first time we had
And did it take you these many hundreds of hours?
No, because we were doing in-person elections and the procedure was different then. We had the list that we verified. There was a whole verification procedure where we checked, you know, residents, you know, were they still residents? So that took a number of hours for the committee. But with the ballots were not issued to everybody on the list. The ballots were issued by the committee at the election table. People had only 3 hours to vote, which wasn't great in terms of democracy. But the committee, man, we held on to those ballots, and we had a printout of who's a resident. And if people came up and they weren't on that printout as having been confirmed, they didn't get a ballot. I think I've told the story about the one guy who just moved in on May 1st, and he went home and got his mortgage papers to show he'd moved in, he was a resident. And we came back with that. We signed off and gave him a ballot. So yes, there were very strict checks that we made sure that we did not give ballots to anybody who was not a valid resident. And that was done for years and years. We got that from Bob Freeman the years before.
So may I
Thank
ask, let me ask an operational question, then I'm sorry to tease this out, but I'm just trying to understand. So we do know we're going forward with this major capital project, the Brookville sidewalk, and we know that is going to take up a lot of time. So I want to defer back in what, without them being here, I don't want to refer to Katie because she's not here, but I know that she would be very deferential to the manager. And so I just want to get an understanding of FTE. Is this something that you feel concerned about in terms of the operations of, is this something that is under a normal year, hey, heck, we could get this done, but in a year that we're going to be stretched with other projects, do you feel that having this little extra juice, because I'm hearing the last time was 8,000, could be 4,000, which is not, that's not an insignificant amount of money, but if the 4,000 balances out so that you can have your attention on our capital project, which is going to be in the excess of 700,000 perhaps, I'm okay with it. I just want to get a sense of what the burden is on this, because I don't think having this done every 2 years is a normative thing. And I just want to get an understanding of what the workload is, and is this going to be a burden on the office?
Best practices, whether it's a burden, how do you do this?
So I haven't, polled the other neighboring communities about best practices of how often they update their voter roll or how they deal with the same problem. I'm sure they all have the same exact problem. All the ones that do vote by mail. Marty's right, that is a different process. But I mean, we still can come up with a very simple. I mean, I believe this can be done pretty simply. It's just a spreadsheet. And if you're, know how to do spreadsheets, it's not that hard to just say, okay, let me compare last year's voter roll to the current voter village office list and see who's the duplicates. Okay, we know those people are good. The people that aren't duplicates, you get a list of people that aren't duplicates. Okay, they're on one of these, but not on the other. So what happened to all those people? You go through the list of people that the office has kept this year of people that have moved out. That'll explain 90% of those people right away. And you can just say, the committee can just vote and say, okay, those people were all on this list and we know where they went because they moved out on this date. We have the list here. And so it's really probably, I can probably create that list with the different breakdowns of people within 2 hours of staff time. I really don't
Let
think
me ask one more question.
that's not the work.
Not meant to be a naive question, but
Yeah.
perhaps it will sound naive. Is this just a function that we could, with our vendor, say, do it? If there's a question about independence, I'm just not sure why.
It's the election committee that needs to verify all those people. So
Okay.
let's say there's 25 people that we're just not sure about. They're not,
Okay.
we don't know where they went, right? We don't have any record of them moving out and they're not on the list. What happened to them? Then it's the election committee that does all the follow-up. The follow-up is what Marty's talking about that, how they spent 40 hours or something following up with all those people. And they did, they were walking around knocking on people's door. They were communicating with people 3 different times, which is way, I mean, honestly, above and beyond what the election regs call for.
Well, it actually is what the election regs say, but Michael, you're right. The time-consuming part is the verification, and we had to verify more than 122 people last year. So it wasn't just 25. And the time-consuming part is the legal requirement under state law and charter, that we not send ballots to people who are not actually residents. And it's difficult to do. We have some residents who are absentee owners, like the Cisnas, who are still on the list, but, and that's legal. They're legal residents. They should get a ballot. So there's a really required process here. And this comes from Boris, who's county board of elections director, who says that we really need to be thorough. So I would really encourage you to understand that this is a burden on the election committee, because the 40 hours is mostly it's not the spreadsheet comparison. I could do that in 2 hours too. It's the follow-up to really confirm people. And it
Okay,
takes,
Ron, do you have a comment there?
So I would say under state law, there's no prohibition against sending a ballot to someone who's on the statewide voter registration list. That's actually presumed to be what will happen. Martin's
The
Edition's
problem is-
charter says people who aren't qualified can't vote. But that doesn't mean under state law, you can't send them a ballot. If that makes sense. So the state law does not actually, in my opinion, mandate that you review and scrub the statewide voter registration list. I think it's pretty well known that the statewide list is inaccurate, but there's really no proactive obligation on the municipalities to go through and scrub that on behalf of the county board of supervisors.
So
We can if we want to, but we're not obligated to do so.
The problem is, of course, that state also prohibits sending ballots to people who aren't qualified voters. And so. that's
No,
kind of-
I don't think that's right, Marty.
Oh, okay, well, I'll accept that. The charter certainly prohibits it.
The-
And
the
we
charter
do-
prohibits voting, not sending ballots.
Well, if they get a ballot,
the
they can vote. The same thing. We do universal, if they have a ballot in hand, they can vote it.
Well, but I think the state law recognizes that the risk of fraud is pretty low, right? We took 100 names off the list, none of whom actually voted the prior year. So I think state law recognizes that, and that's why we don't really have a proactive obligation to scrub. We can if we want to.
Point of clarification, this vendor for $4,000 would be doing the verification, not anything beyond knocking on doors and making phone calls?
What he did 2 years ago was all the spreadsheet work, and there was a lot of spreadsheet work because that was the year that there was like 140 people from the prior year's voter roll that we wanted to scrub and get removed.
So he doesn't even, or he or she doesn't even do the verification. They just do the spreadsheet.
I don't think they did. Marty, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think they did
Yeah.
any of the knocking on the doors or calling residents. They did do a lot of research on, death certificates, looking up
Yeah.
death certificates, looking at property records, try to verify these, 140 people.
Yeah.
Look,
Online research.
It was a big
I'll
job.
just give my final 2 cents as just a treasurer or whatever, if we have to, but look, if there's an estimate that comes back that is reasonable for whatever couple hours of work, and you and the committee or feel that this is of value, to do the couple hours of work, because I do recognize that the committee are volunteers and, this is intensive work. And if that's a burden that the committee feels that frankly, as volunteers is a bit too much for them. And I'm not pointing fingers. I would say, let's see a budget. $4,000 for a couple hours of work seems like it might be a little bit high, but if you guys can come up with an estimate and there's a feeling that this would alleviate a stress point, especially given a year that we're doing a major capital project, I'm inclined. But at this point, it just seems a little bit like, I don't think we have to do a whole audit. I think that's off the table. So this is really filling in a piece of FTE on work that we know has to get done, which I'm hearing differences of it's a lot of work versus it's not a lot of
It's a
work
lot of work for the volunteers.
for the volunteers. So, if we can help the committee in a way that we've got budget.
Yeah.
And I want to be helpful to them.
And I just want to add the village manager to that equation. The question is not just to the committee, but the village manager who has a part in this process as well.
So if we could get like a very clear scope of work of what this is entailing, because it's in the best interests of the normatized operations of having the election run smoothly to have a good final, qualified election, then I'd say, I defer, but it sounds if it's like $1,500 or something to do a half day's worth of work, I think that sounds like a reasonable thing.
It'll be more than a half days, but the 1,500 to 4,000, I think is reasonable. Okay, moving forward with this.
Are you
Issue-
all voting?
Issue, do we agree to
I
issue
thought
an
we were
RFP?
gonna see what the,
Feedback.
yeah, I
Okay.
thought we were gonna see
That was
what
kind
the
of my
range
thought.
would be before we actually entertain.
So,
Is there an urgency to have a decision on this today? I think getting feedback from the committee and from Michael on this would be helpful.
what am I cost?
Just what's the scope of work
Yeah.
and what's the cost?
The cost, but
scope-
also the
The
need.
need, yeah.
Okay, if I may chime in here, thank you very much, all of you, for paying attention to this. The main burden here is not the 2 hours to do the spreadsheets. I can do that. I did it last year. But that the follow-up verification, calls, emails, all of that, the checking of all those voters, that is incredibly time consuming. That's what took the 40 hours or 38 of the 40 hours. And that's what we would want a contractor to do. That contractor would also then, of course, feed that information into the master voter roll spreadsheet with an annotated spreadsheet, as Julian Lampier did in 2024. So it is not the 2-hour spreadsheet. It's the follow-up verification, contacting all those voters. Then the staff burden was issuing, actually mailing the 80-some letters that we had to mail out to people who could not be independently confirmed. And then the follow-up mail out, the committee, looks to the response to that. And then the 57 people who get the second legal mailing, which says we have removed you. That's legal notice.
So what
That's
do
due
we want
process.
here? We want a cost estimate.
A cost estimate, and Ron, not that I feel this is such a slippery slope, and anything I say is I'm gonna get like beat up from one side or the other. But Ron, I just want to get to the legality of at what point do we have an obligation to go the last mile on this? I mean, once you have your list and you come up with those 40, are you expected to knock on doors? I mean, what is the closure here? Because I don't think every community does this, and I just want to have an understanding of what are we obligated to do legally, and then what is it that we can consider that goes above and beyond what legally we're required to do. Oh, you're on mute, Ron. Sorry.
No, my fault. Yeah, it's a question that requires a very, very detailed answer. I think to Marty's point, the election rules that the village have adopted set forth a voter roll verification process. And so there are steps that the committee is supposed to take under those rules, including, well, you can read it at your leisure, page 8 of the rules.
Got it.
But I would say, Martin's Additions is at the head of the pack
Got it.
on voter roll verification. Now, not all my other clients do universal vote by mail. I think the town of Chevy Chase might be the only other one right now. Oh, and section 5 that send a ballot to everybody. But I don't believe either of those jurisdictions are scrubbing the county's voter roll.
Well, my final 2 cents on this is I admire the recommendation of the committee. I also greatly respect and appreciate the idea of having support for folks who are volunteers, recognizing that their level of diligence and their level of process is, kind of ahead of the pack. So like I said, I'm fully open to the idea of if there's a scope of work and an estimate, and this will be in the best interests of our village and also supporting the committees so they don't get burned out or overtaxed.
So we want to have an estimate.
I think an estimate and a scope of just what exactly it is that we're thinking.
I would actually also like to see, which is kind of a tangent perhaps, what our election budget is vis-a-vis surrounding jurisdictions for the election, because our election processes have become inordinately complicated over the past few years and consequently more expensive. And I have heard from residents that it seems like we're spending more and getting the same number or perhaps fewer voters. So I'd really love to see, I'm asking the election committee to please poll surrounding jurisdictions and see what they're spending. Some of this data will be online on their budget pages, and maybe how many votes they get and what their processes are, because ours have just gotten more and more intricate.
Well, Susan,
and perhaps arcane.
One thing I would add to that, just to help with comparability, would be the cost per vote.
Well, yeah, exactly. The number of voters they have,
because we have 1,000, and then how many are qualified. So cost per vote would be helpful.
Right.
And that goes to the access to our village council.
Which is the next item on the agenda. Thank you. We're now moving on to the next item on the agenda.
Oh, Arthur, can I just state real quick?
Go ahead.
In case it wasn't clear, and just to add to what I said before, regardless of what state law mandates. I'm looking at the Village of Martin's Additions election regulations, and they do contain at Appendix A, Part C, detailed steps that the committee is supposed to take to verify the voter roll. So there is that burden built in, so the council should just be aware of.
Well, and I want to be, again, very crystal clear if it didn't come out, is the committee has developed a process which we know is probably leading the pack, and that's a good thing.
Which we
right?
approved.
Which we approve and we appreciate. So I think this really comes down to not questioning the integrity of the quality of what they're trying to get. It's more of the question of, can we support them in a way that's reasonable? End of story. So we just get a scope and a cost, and I'm sure if it's within a reasonable amount and everyone feels that this will be helpful to folks.
Okay. Okay. Moving on.
If I could, excuse me 1 second, Arthur, I'm sorry. There
Yeah.
is a time element here, as our report points out. This process needs to be done basically January, February, March at the latest. And so the RFP needs to go out 60 days before that or more. I mean, Michael, you know how long it takes sometimes to get responses to RFPs. And Ron, again, this is where relying on your advice is helpful because there are legal requirements on how long an RFP has to be out
Put out
there.
an
You don't
RFP if
need-
it's under
Mar-
10,000.
Marty, you don't need to put out an RFP for this. If we were satisfied with the previous vendor and he or she's willing to do it for less money, if it's under 10,000, we don't need to put out an RFP.
That's great. That's wonderful news. Thank you. Yes.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. The election committee has requested the ability to have direct access to our counsel, our lawyer that we hire, who happens to be with us tonight. This is the usual procedures is for all council members and all committees to make requests for legal opinions through either the council chair or through the manager. And this is a request to have direct access. The procedures that are that we have used for many years, for probably 10, 15 years, is what I've just suggested. All requests go either through the council chair or through the manager, is also used among all our legal counsel's other clients. So the question is, do we carve out an exception for the election committee to have direct access? Does anyone think yes? I see
I have a
no.
question before I
Go
respond.
ahead.
Yeah.
Is it okay if I ask?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I just want to have reference point, and it could be other committees, but the one committee that comes to mind that I know there was a lot of work that we did with Ron was the ethics committee. So I just want to use that, but feel free to use other committees, statutory committees. Has there ever been a case, for example, has the ethics committee had direct access? I just want to be
As far
standardized.
as I know, the ethics committee has only contacted Ron directly to share a password or to share some.
So in
And I
terms
still
of,
facilitate
so
it.
I
Yeah,
just want
and that's
to be,
facilitated with Michael.
so I want to be just
no,
consistent.
they
If-
don't,
If,
no.
have we ever given this authority
don't
to
think we
any
have.
other committees or
No.
task force before?
I don't think so.
Not on a
I
regular
think there
basis.
have
I
been
think there was
breaches
a
on
period
occasion.
when that process broke down.
Yeah, that's the breach. That's exactly
The other
right.
example that Arthur forgot to include was the council can vote amongst yourselves.
We can.
So
a
if the chair
majority.
and I don't want to contact Ron, 3 of you can vote to contact Ron.
We ought to write this
You
down
can
somewhere.
state
This
it.
is,
It's
has been
written down.
discussed and talked about, but it's not written in any policy anywhere.
So I can appreciate the response. And, okay, I'm gonna put myself out there and perhaps ask the question, and I see Marty already has herself off mute, but I'm trying to understand the particulars of, for example, is there a reason why the committee, at least in current day, feels they can't go to a chair or manager with a question, a legal question, and say, I'd like to contact our counsel to clarify, is it
Convenience.
the idea that there could be some nefarious
No.
action that could occur?
Convenience.
Yeah, I just want to, because
It's a matter,
for
it's a matter
example,
of
as a
timing.
council member, other than being the chair, I can't go to Ron.
Right.
And I know there have been times where I've, but any time that I have ever wanted to ask a question, I have not been denied that. The only time where there might have been, I wouldn't even say pushback, is if someone had the answer, right? So if I had a question, I would usually copy the chair who was, the person who was chair in that given year. I copy our manager and I copy Ron and I say, I have a question. And then if the manager and the chair were unable to respond, then they would just say, Ron, go ahead and do your thing. So I just I think that process can work.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we've, Ron is a busy guy. I don't think he minds billing a couple extra 6-minute increments for questions from any given committee, but I think we as a council have facilitated anything that's come our way in the past, and if the committee has any requests, they can provide the questions to us and we can pass them on.
Alexa.
Let me just
think that you
clarify.
may
But
be
Hold on,
talking
Marty.
about, my question is, if the election committee wanted to have direct access, it would mean they would talk directly to Ron? Is that what we're saying?
Yes.
And is that the protocol right now?
No.
No.
The current protocol is that not even council members have direct access to Ron
Except-
unless they're the chair. And so
But if
this would
given
be
permission,
bestowing,
Right.
yeah.
It's
Okay.
based on, we
Uh,
all.
on-
Controlling the flow.
And yeah, controlling the flow and there has been some concern about cost. In fact, I think the election committee chair has registered some concern about legal costs in the past. And so this would be a way to help contain that, because maybe the answer is obvious without having to go to Ron.
Okay.
may I speak?
Marty,
speak?
who said that? Marty?
Marty.
Yeah, Ms.
Yeah,
Marty.
go ahead.
The issue here is partly timing and partly a complete answer. If we had a procedure that we sent our question, our detailed, because election questions can be somewhat complex when you get down into the weeds, as we just saw in the discussion of the voter roll verification. That's one of the things we would want to have Ron available to for us this year. Was, we'd love to streamline the voter roll verification, but we can't do that without talking to Ron in the weeds, down in the details. And so if we were able to give, Arthur or Alexa, our wonderful liaison this year, the written question to give to Ron, and if Ron then could get back to us fairly quickly, because, we're on a tight timeline on the election schedule, in writing, and we got Ron's direct answer, that would be helpful. We might then need to go back to Ron and say, well, we don't understand this. Can you clarify this? Again, you can't have a regular conversation the way you would in a practical situation where you sit down with a lawyer and you can do it in 10 minutes. What we've got here is a fairly burdensome back and forth written procedure, which is doable. But these are not simple yes or no questions because, the committee has some expertise. We know all the easy answers. This is where you're down in the weeds and you need to really get to a technicality. And we need to be able to get an answer back from Ron in Ron's words directly, not filtered through any filter. And if we don't quite understand it, we need to go back to Ron and say, well, we need to do this, operationalize this. What about XYZ? So there's a legal conversation here, if you will, that the election committee needs to have. And we wanted to streamline the process by just having your permission, maybe with a budget dollar cap on it. If you want to put a dollar cap on it, that'd be fine with us. But where we could say, here's the written question, we want to go to Ron, and then be able to go back to Ron and say, what about this piece or that piece? Does that make sense to you all in the council, that why we would want to have this kind of
I
conversation?
see a lot of shaking heads, no.
I think, Marty, if there are real time constraints, this council promises to be very efficient and timely in getting to Ron. And I know Ron has been very responsive at all times. And even nuanced questions will come with a yes or no answer from Ron. Yes, you can do it. No, you can't do it. So we commit, I think, as a council to help facilitate any questions or concerns through our regular order. And Ron, I know, is always
I
responsive.
think the answer to that fourth question is no. we are not granting access.
Well, let me just give you I just want to clarify. I have no problem with the committee or representative of the committee from the election committee or any committee. So I want to be very clear. This is not just the election committee. It's any of our statutory committees or even task force. If they have a legal question regarding their operations, I think they should feel free to write that down and pass it along to the manager and the chair, whoever the chair is at that time. And they should feel free, in my opinion, to copy Ron. But I still believe that the gatekeeping of turning on Ron, and Ron, you know how much I admire, you, but, in terms of activating the clock and saying, yes, we should, I just feel that let's keep the normative process that we have for all council members and everyone is just, if you've got questions, copy them to our manager, copy them to Arthur. If you want to copy them to Ron, go for it. And I don't think we've ever had an issue of stopping engagement if it was a question that was not answered or if it was pertinent to our village.
And
So
speaking of Ron's clock, Ron, I think you can go home now.
I was just going to say that.
We want all future Bolt generations that go to private colleges. We will facilitate that.
Right.
But yeah, I think.
Okay.
No, I'll just say real quickly to address Marty's concern, the request for advice could be a request for a phone call so we can have the back and forth. Frankly, that's sometimes more efficient than writing out a response.
Yeah, right. Good. Well, thank you, Ron. Go
All right,
home.
good
Oh,
night,
you are
everybody.
home. Okay.
Good
Good
night.
night. Okay, we are now down
So
to.
I just want, we're not saying no, we're just saying follow regular procedure.
Right.
Which
Follow
is if there
regular
are questions or requests to
Yeah,
have time with our lawyer,
Right.
just
Right.
ask our manager and our chair
good.
to arrange it.
Yeah, okay. Do we, yeah, we do have a few residents left. If there are any observations, questions, wisdom.
Oh, wisdom, that's when Marty's hand went up. Let's go.
When I said wisdom, your hand went up, Marty.
No, thank you for that, but no, I raised my hand at the question part of it. I had actually a question about the survey, and I think that Lynn Welly also had a question at that point, if he's still on. My question about the survey was something that a number of neighbors have raised with me over the last few years. Number one, thank you for doing the survey, and I love having it done, in such a professional way. Kudos to you, Michael. But the feedback I got from a number of neighbors was that the first two questions about, did the council get back to you right away? Did the staff get back to you right away? Those are important. But what I get is the same comment from like 4 different people, 5 now, said, well, it's not just how fast they got back, it's was the answer satisfactory? Was the answer informative? So I would like to ask you to consider sort of making each of those first 2 questions, not just how fast did people get back to you, but were you satisfied with the response? Because a non-substantive response leaves people more frustrated than when they started. So that's my suggestion on the survey. And by the way, thank you for including the election right question again this year. We appreciate that.
Okay, good. Okay, Lynn,
Good evening.
so you want to join the fire board like your wife used to?
No, that's too hot of a subject for me.
Okay.
Is that a pun?
Okay, Lynn, what else do you have to add?
The survey, is there an expiration date for input? On
Yeah, well, yeah,
for
it kinda
survey
goes
question?
An hour ago.
Yeah, they were hot to go. We kind of dragged it out for an extra few days to consider it tonight.
So after the meeting tonight, there's no more room to make a survey suggested.
Well, how much time do you need and could you do it now? Do you have it on the top of your head? So we can hear?
It's only off the top of my head. I would prefer if I could get it to you by in the business tomorrow in a written draft form that would be, properly structured.
Talk about it.
What, could you give us a hint of the subject?
Yes. The subject would be the community bulletin board.
Ah, okay.
And asking residents, if they're in favor of it, neutral or against it.
Okay, good. Okay,
So that's a survey question. Other subjects. As we look at the picture of it's identified as Michael Silliman and the council members, we don't see all the council members all the time. And is there a reason why all the council members are not visible all the time?
visible.
What do you mean, on the Zoom meeting?
No,
You see?
I can see you, but on the far left is Susan, and about the only time that we can see her is when she's leaning forward on the table.
Oh,
Most
yeah,
of the time, we maybe see
just
her
the-
nose and her lips.
Worried about my presence.
Wait a
Lynn?
minute,
I will
the
make an
camera
effort
just
to
has
lean
to be-
forward the entire
Michael,
No,
can you
I'm
just
just-
swing the
I'm just-
camera around a little bit?
I'm just wondering if the, like at this time, we've been looking at a very nice picture of the podium all night when nobody's there except when
Yeah.
when the person was there for the ethics committee.
Okay,
Or
got
I
it.
mean, the anti-Semitism.
Here's your comment.
Okay, we just gotta swing the camera around.
We will,
All right.
we will pay closer
Um,
attention to the camera positioning.
Okay.
speakers.
Any
There was,
other residents?
yes, wait,
Oh,
please.
you're still, okay.
Please don't cut
Wait,
me
there's
short.
more.
I don't want to have to wait another 4 months to bring up some items that are on my mind now. I have three other items. In the conversation tonight, there was a lot of conversation with regard to this 1914 social election committee meeting. And Jeffrey brought up the question about the demographics. Well, there's been a huge change in demographics in that 10-year time. When you just consider the mansionization, not only the mansionization, but the over mansionization of properties because of non-compliance with VMA setbacks. And if you were to make a comparison of the
Lynn,
the age
Lynn,
of the,
I have a question for you.
I would prefer not to be interrupted. I
I
find it
would
very
prefer
upsetting.
that you don't make misstatements about setback.
Pardon?
Do you have any examples where setbacks have been violated?
Well, I think it was brought out in a council meeting at one point in time that probably, I don't know if it was Cummings Lane or somewhere, when this with this big exception was made for the building contractor to not be in compliance for water issues, that in fact the setback requirement had been looked at as far as the county setbacks, whereas the Village of Martin Addition setbacks are more restrictive, but they had not been complied with. And that was going on for many long period of years. And I think since then, maybe there's been some correction, hopefully.
I think you're mistaken on that, but proceed. Continue.
That's a side issue. The demographic change is huge as far as maybe residents' participation in council meetings, the whole mood of council meetings, say 1914 to now. The average age of residents in the house that was destroyed and the average age of residents now and the makeup of those families. It makes a big difference as to the whole demographic of the community and people participation. That's just a comment.
Lynn,
As far as
can I ask a question? What does 1914 mean?
well, there was a reference to this election committee social party where like 40 people were present. It was discussed and made reference to in the meeting tonight a number of times. I might be making the wrong reference, but
Okay, I just didn't understand it. Okay, thank you, Lynn. Thank you.
all right, fine. There was a statement made about how our elections have become complicated and over so. I would like to say that a lot of that is because of council meddling in previous years, which is most vastly illustrated by the fact that when Natalie resigned from being on an election committee, and not only that year, but other years before and after that. I was once told by a council chairman, I don't remember who it was, that the task force or the statutory committees, they do their work, they bring their work to the council, and that the work as presented to the council should just be adopted. But it seems that the council likes to just change things and not go with the hard work and output that comes from these committees. And therein lies the complication. The issue with the elections over the last few years has been repeated. Just
It's all your fault.
you come up with, they come up with a plan, and then the council interjects, and the council has to do the rework 1, 2, 3, and 4 times. This should be a boilerplate thing, except for the personality for every election. I just don't understand why it's been so complicated, except for the council meddling. That, you know, now a third item.
But Lynn, it's in our charter to meddle as a council. That's part of our charter. The committees present drafts, and it's our job to meddle. So if you want these committees to have absolute power, maybe propose a charter amendment.
No, then what I don't understand is why the changes, the committee comes in, the election committee comes in with a plan.
Yeah.
And then the meddling is consistent year after year after year, trying to make changes that ultimately, because of the diligent, persistent work of the committee and Marty particularly, is sort of put aside, but only after additional hard work and hours. I appreciate the fact that you've all been here now approaching 2.5 hours. And I want to appreciate the fact that you know, this is all volunteer time on your part. And you've been doing it for all of you for a long time, except for the new council member. And I appreciate your probably knowing the experience of these other council members, but putting yourself forward for this on a monthly basis. So thank you for that. I think I'll sign off with that. The one thing that my number one button right now is the community bulletin board that is open government based. I talked about this at the last council meeting in person, and I want to ask what forward progress has been made on that.
The discussion ended with the question of how to monitor a village-run listserv or comment section. Because what happens when someone makes a information post on that feed, and how do you censor that or monitor that?
How do you monitor it?
And the council has repeatedly over the years responded to this question saying we are not going to do that.
That's a full-time job. That's an additional full-time job.
For at least one person and maybe two.
We are not creating a publicly run listserv by this village.
All right, so is there some way that a resident can post a thought, any comment, and that would be open for the village to see?
You can create your own website and post your thoughts wherever you want, Lynn.
Or join the other non-official listserv.
And supposedly non-political.
Well, the thing is, the non-official listserv, which I am a part of, is not recognized officially by the council, but still at the last meeting, we had a great deal of discussion with a letter that came from Mr. Lorch, which is the type of thing that should be open to everybody to know about, and not just the people that attend council meetings.
Okay.
Was that not a legitimate issue that he brought up? It's just something, you know, this is the Brookville sidewalk.
It was an issue and it was dealt with, yeah.
I think it's a fair point, Lynn, on two things you said, starting with the election plans, recognizing we've got George on here as well, who served and admirably and lots of time in his committee. And then we have members of the current committee on. And I know we're all as a council doing our best to make each year a bit smoother. And in fact, if we recognize that earlier in this very meeting, we unanimously approved the committee's recommendations on the date changes to a plan which the council has already thought of as an evergreen plan because of where it is in its current state. So I think we've gotten a long way. We've had some bumps and there have been challenges, we all admit it, but I think we're getting a lot closer to where you hope to see it. And then this final point on the bulletin board piece, I mean, I do think that we are continuing to research ways that we may up our game in ways that other communities may be using technology to continue to solicit feedback. So for example, the last meeting that we had, we talked about when there are ordinances or very specific pieces of legislation or big pieces or big ticket items, there is a normative process where we've seen the county post things and residents can make comments. I don't think that we've gotten to the point of understanding how you do that at large without a very specific thing to put out there. But I think we're going to continue to research it. But your points are very well taken, that there is technology out there that we haven't quite figured out how we operationalize it. But I think our manager and staff are working hard to figure that out.
Good.
All right, I just got, going back to the survey again. These are thoughts that occurred to me, which I made note of during the meeting. What does the council do? What's the purpose of the council? We have a lot of new residents. Most of the residents probably are not actively following the business of our incorporated municipality. Maybe it would be nice for them to know what the difference is between our municipality versus non-municipality parts of the county and what the benefits are to those people. That might encourage them to participate because they may not be aware of the fact that they have an opportunity to participate. And then what is the, then what is the purpose and the main purpose and function of the council? What benefits does it bring to the community and to the residents individually? I think if there was some illustrations and definition on these items, it would go a long way for further participation among the residents. Because right now, I think these people come in, they just leave their lives, especially with the mansion, the occupants of the mansionized houses. They're coming in with young children and they have full-time lives. Arthur, you are certainly an example of that. I know you're very dedicated to your family and want to spend as much time as you possibly can with them. And we have a lot of other people in that demographic. Some of those people have come forward, but we need more. And I think if we give a definition as to what the benefit of our municipality and what it can bring to the residents, that just might help a whole lot.
Thank you, Lynn. And I think I see motion around me.
I think he made the motion and I want to
We have a
second it.
motion.
And I second. to
We already
adjourn.
have a motion to adjourn and a second, and we have a vote to adjourn.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Good night, everybody.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Marty. Thank you, George.
Good night.